Recording now.
Oh, wait.
All right.
Oh, it's recording.
Whenever you're ready, James.
Yeah.
I know. I didn't see the recording. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Andrew's Amazing Podcast. I'm one of your host, James Santana. As always, I'm joined by my illustrious psychic and fellow mutant on Krakoan. Krakoan? We're going with Krakoan?
Krakoan.
Hunter Valeria.
I mean, I'm not on every episode. I haven't been on the last two. So,
That's fine. And I covered
it's
you
all
anyway. And we have a very special guest joining us from last week's episode, our Juneteenth celebration episode, and from very many past episodes, our Dark Phoenix episode, and one of our other LGBT episodes, which we divulged into talking about X-Men. I feel like you're our X-Men correspondent. Justin Allen, welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back.
2
such
weeks
a
in a
short
row.
time. I know, right?
maybe
Might
3
get-
weeks if this one is a long one. By the way, my camera's frozen, which is why I look perpetually stoned. I'm just like,
I was wondering. I was like, oh,
hopefully it'll
what's happening to his
turn
face?
itself back on. My camera sucks. But anyway, yeah, man, we're doing Krakoa. I was contractually obligated not to be on last week's episode. So,
Yes.
Yeah, it
but
was for us.
I've made my return for Krakoa. Something that I'll spoil it for everybody now. I've read 5 books out of the 100 that are here. So, I've read the important stuff like the events and the X-Men by Duggan, but all of my interstitial reading was just from characters I liked, like Way of X or Excalibur. Like those are just but otherwise I've been very slow on my uptake. But you guys are 99%, if not 100% complete on most of these X-Men titles, at least in the main line.
I have 90%. I have 90% of them.
I feel like you were definitely going above what my end is. I'd probably say like 85%.
That's
There
fair.
are definitely series that I just
There is
did
a
not read.
lot, and some of them are. I was telling you before, just James got here, but a lot of these slides have been condensed. It could be much bigger than it is. So we'll just get into this. So let me just get back on here. Look at that! I made a already.
Oh, look at you with the
Ba-bam.
animations. I got a feature.
Oh,
That's
it only
awesome.
gets
Yes.
worse from here.
Okay. And guys, we are brought to you by Andrew's Amazing Podcast in Sable, New York. We have no news to talk about because we are dedicating this entire episode to Krakoa. If you didn't know about the banter and everything I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks on the show and stuff at work, we are covering Krakoa from beginning to end. We are getting all the good, the bad, the in-between, how we felt about everything Krakoa. And yeah, Hunter did a great job because for behind the scenes stuff.
Save your praise until after you see what I've put in here.
Oh no. And yeah, we are going to do a full episode for Krakoa. So guys, if you guys haven't read Krakoa, don't worry. This is kind of a catch-up tier, so you guys can go jump right into the From the Ashes era starting in a week or two.
Yeah, From the Ashes does make a tiny appearance at the end. I made sure to put it in here. The only
Thank
books
you.
that are X-Men books that don't make an appearance here because James would get mad were the excellent books from Allred and Peter Milligan.
Because they're not
weren't
canon.
They weren't even in the expanded reading. None of the excellent stuff was there. So I had to take the L myself. I would have included them, but Krakoa says nah.
Yes. But like I said, if you guys didn't read Krakoa, this is kind of a cool catch-up tier, so you can go back and read it. If so, you guys don't have to read it going into From the Ashes. And if you did, tell us if you agree or disagree. Actually, I will put a poll on this week's episode for that. So,
Right. Very cool.
all right, let's jump
get
into it.
this. Start off with the top. We got House and Powers of X, written by Hickman with art by Pepe Larraz. There's the description of the series. Not all of them have this, but this one does because it's important. Charles Xavier reveals his master plan for mutant kind, one that will bring mutants out of humankind's shadow and into the light once more. Meanwhile, Powers of X reveals mutant kind's secret history, changing the way we look at every X-Men story before and after. Is pretty good. Moira retcon. So, guys, what do we think about House and Powers of X? This is where it all started. We were all hyped for this. At least I feel like me and James were.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's an X book, so I'm always pretty hyped about it. I thought it was pretty good. I can always appreciate a good retcon, and especially with Moira.
Oh, Krakoa has so many retcons. I have retcon tabs everywhere.
I mean, you need them because they were kind of just like, we're gonna stitch together this whole new wacky history for the mutants, and you know what? We're just gonna be like, nah, fam, that didn't exist. Nah, we're gonna change that a little bit. So I thought it was a pretty good introduction to kind of like a new saga into the X-Men. Um, James, I don't know if you want
No,
to.
I was gonna let you keep going. One, I love it. I like Jonathan Hickman a lot. His biggest, if you don't read X-Men, or if this was your first time reading Hickman, he did Fantastic Four for a long time. And led into Secret Wars. He did Avengers, which led into Secret Wars.
East of
And
West, which led into nothing else. East of West.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I like his work a lot. And I was looking forward for his take on what the X-Men franchise was going to be. This, as a whole, though, was the one thing I didn't like about Hassan Powers was the
The
fact that it was
reading
really
order.
no, it's not even that. Yes, because so every issue had in the back had a reading order. So it was like House 1, Powers 1, House 2.
Oh, I
House
forgot Nimrod rules. Sorry,
Uh,
I forgot there
God.
was one more piece in here.
but yeah, it's cool. It does set the Moira McTaggart Moira X retcon. I was saying that Moira had always been a mutant. The one that had died during the Legacy virus was a Skrull. I guess that's what they were claiming.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, why
that
not?
oh
You
yeah.
know.
And with that, if she was to die, we reset everything, and Charles and Magneto are kind of setting everything up behind the scenes. It's a great setup. I think it's one of the best setups for a launching for a whole series of books that we've ever done before. Marvel's ever done before, really. Outside
It's
of
a very
Secret
good
Wars, which he helms.
standalone too.
Yes, if you're a
You
fan
can
of
read
X,
this just piece as it is. House Powers,
yes,
the big Hoxpox collection. It's a nice piece just by itself.
yes, which my brother-in-law has all my X-Men, so I'm annoyed. Kind of want my X-Men books back.
I also believe RB Silva helps as well. I didn't credit him on this one because he's everywhere else, but I see his little tag in the top corner.
Yes.
So let's give RB Silva some love too.
Again, I love the art. The story is really great. The idea of Krakoa being the mutant nation that finally kind of Xavier's dream is coming to fruition is fantastic. The only thing I didn't care about was the powers of X stuff because it was like exploring. It was that was the long form story because it kind of answers itself towards the end of Krakoa, like what that entire thing meant, really. But
Kinda.
kind of, yeah. And we'll get to it when we get to it. But it was supposed to be like 1,000 years in the future where there's a new set of X-Men out there surviving, where there is a phalanx coming and there is this robot dominion that exists, and Hickman gets very heady, Morrison-like, with this piece. So, with
And
House.
I definitely agree on that sense because it was kind of a confusing read for me. I am not a super huge fan of like an invidious race kind of like plot line where you kind of start in the middle of things and then you kind of go back and
Right.
kind of explain everything. I very much like linearity. I like starting from the beginning, going through the middle, and going to the
Oh,
end.
same dude.
So yeah, when I
100%.
first started reading it, I was like, "What is happening right now?" I guess I'll leave this in my pocket, and hopefully, we'll come back to it and explain everything.
It kind of does, I guess.
Kind of, sort of. I'm
It
not
does enough.
emotionally, yeah. I'm not emotionally satisfied with it. It was kind of just like, oh, and Hickman does all these heady stories where he has a lot of details that he puts in
Oh
because
my goodness, read his Avengers run.
uh,
That book is a headache. It's great, but it's a headache.
and that
I first started reading Avengers with Hickman. I chose the wrong jumping on point for that, for both reading Hickman and for reading Avengers.
yeah, that's a dive into the deep end,
Yeah,
honestly.
they hit me with that X-Nihil stuff and those gold and red people, and I was like, what am I reading? This isn't the Avengers. All of them turned to dust when they fell off this platform in a white void. What are we doing? Like,
That happens.
wild.
But yeah,
let's move on to the next slide before we keep talking too much about this. We got Dawn of X. This is the whole big relaunch, baby. This is where we start. All the books start with this. Two main miniseries that lead into it were House of Powers. It's the first fave, culminates in the crossover X of Swords, which we will get to at the end of the phase. But right now, we got some Schmecks men to cover. First 2 volumes, plus a few extra issues to get to 15, tie into the first phase of the Krakoan Age. They're done by Hickman, Lionel Francis Yu, and R.B. Silva. There he is. He's back. Cyclops and Jean bring their family to the moon along with Wolverine. We don't talk about it. So well-needed Cyclops propaganda.
Feel
Good
like we
status
need to
quo.
talk about it, but
Well, the Tom Brevoort doesn't want to talk about it.
No,
so.
Tom Brevoort was like that didn't happen. And okay,
even
so
though
to be fair,
even though the doors are conjoined, but whatever.
all right. To be fair, no. To be fair,
Genie in the middle. I mean, what?
To be fair, after to shout out to Cerebro, which is my X-Men podcast I listen to all the time. When they had Hickman on, after he had left Marvel, after he left X-Men, they had interviewed him and was like, "Oh, hey, well, why, hey, thank you for making this, blah blah blah." And he goes, I didn't make them. They're not a couple. Y'all can think of it, but I didn't do that. It was like I gave Marvel one edict. Either I make set couples that Marvel has to listen to all the time until he's done with his book, which he thought he had a 20-year plan happening. Or no one is a couple at all.
Except for Rogue and Gambit.
Well, that's the thing. They were like, no, we're not going to let you just tell us like, oh, these are the canon couples because we have to listen to you because you're our head X-Men guy. So they gave him, they're like, all right, fine. I'm just going to make everyone do whatever. And he goes, that's kind of what it is. It's whatever now.
I mean,
but
it's
yes.
definitely like, there's subtext and there's subtext. Like something's going on there.
There's blatant text.
Yeah, I was
Wolverine and Cyclops are talking about Jean Grey in a bikini, and then Scott goes, "What about me in a Speedo?" And Wolverine looks at him like, "Hell yeah!" What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I was kind of just like, oh, I don't even have to read between the lines here. Like this is blatant and overt.
Yes.
So you can historian they were best friends all you want to,
but I will historian.
We all know there were throuple vibes like crazy happening there,
especially during the first era. Especially afterwards, obviously it gets toned down a bit. But these Hickman issues are the biggest champions of the throuple.
Yes, in fact, so much so they were at the Marvel Pride issue that year.
Yeah, so like, it was a thing. What else do you guys have to say about X-Men from Hickman? This is where Scott had to do some family stuff. He hung out with his dad, his kids, Wolverine, and then Vulcan was around for a bit, and then it tied into Extra Storage, which we will not talk about till later.
Yes. So, really with X-Men, the first 7 issues are just kind of like one-shots. They are meant to set up the other books. Like one of the books is the prelude to X-Force. One's a prelude to Excalibur. A lot of them were all a lot of the first couple issues were preludes to the rest of the ongoing series for the first for the first Age of Krakoa. So that was cool. It was awful reading because it was like almost episodic. But it was good if it was a cool way to introduce people into these concepts. Like, all right, cool, we're opening up X-Force with Xavier dying, and we're going to do that, and then we'll lead into X-Force. We're going to explore about Otherworld, and that, it was like the first volume of it was kind of a cool. Here's kind of the world, but with showing it through the eyes of Cyclops and everything, which is great. Cyclops, and it should have been Cyclops' story. The sad Vulcan story was whatever. It was cool. It was kind of to explain, like, hey, he's still damaged and he never actually died.
Yeah, him chilling on the moon.
Well, because that's what it was. Like, it was about more of that version of oh my goodness, a Vulcan was never resurrected. He was just the Vulcan that had Fort Black Bolt, and he just never died. He was stuck in this whole thing. They just brought him out and showed how messed up he was. Also, quick tangent back to Powers and House of Powers. That's also where you get introduced to the Resurrection Protocol, which got abused wildly.
Oh yeah, the 5 are able to bring about resurrection for everybody. The 5, it's Hope, Elixir, Egg, which is originally Gold Balls from the Bendis era, and then 2 characters that I could not tell you the name of.
Tempo and
what's his name? The goo guy who can manipulate reality.
Elixir?
No,
I already said Elixir.
Goo guy.
Oh, Proteus.
Yes, Proteus. I was like,
Proteus,
his name always escapes me.
Yeah, he looks like a fully powered up Wonder Man or a
Yeah.
Korvac.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
a big purple guy.
he's also Moira's son.
Oh well, they don't say that like at all in this.
They talk about it in the third Hellfire Gala.
Oh well, that's freaking 100 issues away, buddy.
You know, I'll talk about that. Forget that.
And I mean, I guess precursor, like in
Well,
the
yeah.
past, that's always been in like something that Moira's always tried to like help Proteus because he's always been a bit unbalanced. So,
Yep.
because the crazy kooky reality manipulators.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yes.
glad they gave him a seat in the High Council of the Five. Even though the
Because he-
Five, I feel like, don't get enough play until later on. Like they're in the beginning a lot, and then they're wherever they're needed, like X Factor, they pop up, and you
Yeah.
know, we'll
But
get
they're
to
meant-
more of those later. But yeah, they just kind of sprinkle them throughout. Even though they should have had their own book at least
I mean,
at one
yeah.
point.
I know they should have.
It's just be calling them the Five. Like imagine a book about these guys figuring out how to revive people and maybe reviving like one of their old long lost.
No. Could have even been Mystique's little like secret mission to revive Destiny. I don't know. There's just some missed bags here. Well,
But
no. Well, we'll talk about that when we get to X Factor because that's a whole thing I have. For X
yeah,
Factor.
let's move on to the next book.
Wait. Before we move on,
Hmm.
the one big new introduction for villains in the stage of X-Men was horticulture, which is just the
they
Golden
pop up a lot.
Girls. They're just the Golden Girls.
Yeah, they are great. I love
They
them.
are pretty amazing.
I'm
I
like-
love. Because how do you fight them? Like, how
They
do
talk
you-
about that. They're like, "How do I beat up an old lady?" And they're like, "We don't have a problem with it." And they start fucking them up.
I
Yeah.
know.
And it's funny because like they are meant to be. The
I think if you
Golden
sent the
Girls.
Hellions to do it, the Hellions would have done it.
Oh,
Oh,
100%.
absolutely,
Mhm.
without a doubt.
So something like, yeah, put you in that old lady's brain. Like, yeah, sure. But yeah, you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, let's get on to the next one. We got Marauders 1 through 15. That's 2
Uh,
volumes. It's Duggan and Mateo. These are all in issue 1 release order, by the way.
Mm.
So, you know, all the issues are obviously sporadic, but they were listed on Wikipedia, cough, cough, as coming out in order of this by issue 1. So this is why Marauders is next. This was Duggan, Lally, and Caselli. Kitty and Emma become pirates to bring supplies and refugees to Krakoa. Kitty can't enter gates for reasons, and OG Pyro is back. We love him.
We love OG Pyro.
We love OG Pyro. He's Australian, and he's always down to party. So
I
that's a good
know,
time.
right? And let's talk about like Kitty and Emma becoming besties. Like, I feel like
Oh yeah, that's a common theme throughout the entirety of the Krakoan era. Is just Emma and Kitty just hanging out.
which, you know, comes so far from them because considering that like Kitty's first introduction to Emma was her like mind raping the X-Men in like the bottom of, you know, their version of the school, and then having her parents being tricked into joining the like Massachusetts Academy caused a lot of trauma for her when it comes to Emma. So the fact that they were able to kind of like bury the hatchet along these lines and have now become like pretty close is pretty fun.
Yeah, I think it was around the time that Bendis took over when he started having them kind of be a little bit more friendly. And then during the Colors era with Gold, Blue, and Red, Kitty was leading the X-Men, and I know her and Emma had their own thing going on because of Cyclops's radicalism, but we'll get there in another episode at some point, maybe, probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
X-Men are...
Probably if we have to do like a Avengers X-Men book.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, no, it's so Marauders again, like Hunter
ABX
said,
2,
it's-
whenever that comes out.
when Kitty and Emma become pirates. So the way this book is set up is that it's part of the Frost Trading Company, the Hellfire Trading Company, and Kitty, for some reason, her powers don't allow her to enter through gates, which is dumb. It's a thing that they address and fix later on. But for the first part of the issue, she breaks her nose. If you look at the cover of volume 1, she has the black eye and broken nose because she walked into a gate and broke her nose. She also kisses a girl, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's a thing," and I'm like, "Who cares?" Clara always wanted her to be gay, so who cares?
See you later. And then she just smashed her face onto the wall. I'm like, oh, damn.
And she also has the words "kill you" written on her hand as a tattoo.
I thought it was Kill Shaw.
Later on, it's Kill Shore.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, so the Hellfire Trading Company sends out the Marauders as a they're supposed to trade the medicines that Xavier and all the Krakoa has made to give to countries that are allies nations to Krakoa. But their other mission is to rescue mutants that are trapped in countries that don't recognize Krakoa. So a lot of the early stages, like them going into Russia, and it's them going to Madripoor, um, and setting up a bunch of other things there. But a lot of it is them kind of like they are pirates. Like they are. This is treated as a pirate story, and this is something I was going to talk about as we go into these other books. Every X-Men book outside of X-Men is themed to some sort of superhero and ideology. So it's like superheroes, but they're pirates. You know, um, it's really great. I love the team up, the lineup in the beginning. It is supposed to be Emma's side of the Hellfire company. So it's Kitty and this becomes the Red Queen eventually.
Yeah.
Bishop is the Black Bishop. Sorry, it's the White Bishop. And later on the Red Bishop. Iceman's on the team, and so is OG Pyro. Pyro's just there for chaotic bisexual behavior, and Storm's there to mother all of them.
Yeah, but Storm bounces about halfway through because she's got to go do Mars stuff.
I mean,
Right,
she's
same thing.
like, I'm basically too powerful for this, so
Oh, dude,
She
she's
is.
like,
y'all
yeah,
have
why,
fun.
she's like, why am I a pirate? I can fly.
I know, right?
Everyone else
Yep.
can't fly, but she can.
She's like, I don't need a ship to get around.
Yeah, she's like, I control the water. Why are we driving in boats?
And it's funny because, like, in the early stages of the issue, they take the name Marauders, and they all kind of have a problem with it because the name Marauders is Sinister's team that created the Mutant Massacre,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh, we're going to take it back, I guess. Let's just go on the ship and go."
And Pyro's like, yeah, let's fucking get there. We got to get some tattoos on our faces too. Crikey, shrimp Barbie fire.
Which
my
the problem
impression.
is, I know it is the problem. Oh, and also Bobby's sleeping with Christian, who is Emma's brother.
Emma's brother.
And
Yeah.
he also does make mention that Pyro is not his Pyro, as in Simon from the Colors era,
Yes.
where somebody gave Avalanche and Pyro like new identities, basically by making it wasn't new people got powers of those old
Yeah.
villains. Simon was one of them who was a Pyro. I think he makes an appearance somewhere in the era, but I
He
couldn't
does.
tell you where.
He's a background. He does. He's a background character, and the difference between oh my god, Pyro.
Face tattoo.
Yeah, face tattoo Pyro. I was trying to say his real name, but I can't remember his real
It's
name. It's Saint John.
St. John something.
Yeah, John's. Yeah, something like that.
John St. John.
Him, something it's a long name, and Simon is that Simon actually can make fire and manipulate fire. Pyro can't make fire.
He
That's
can
what-
only control it.
control
He's a
it, yes.
pyrokinetic.
Yes. But yeah, it's really cool. This was one of the first books to explain like how the world works, and how Krakoa was. This was the first also political book of Krakoa, showing like, hey, not everyone's gonna be allied nations to Krakoa, and it's really cool. Like, hey, we're still gonna operate and give these drugs to people and get out there and still do like mutant cool stuff. So
Heck yeah.
And
Any
also, I
closing
like
thoughts on Marauders.
yes. Out of 5, I give it a 4
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah,
for this
it's like-
half.
I definitely like saw it as like a 3.5. Like I like the lineup; it wasn't too bad. I like some of the storylines; it wasn't too terrible. It was fun.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the more fun. A lot of the X-Men books are very fun, and we'll see a common theme as they go down the line where they just get more and more fun, but then they kind of lose track of the sauce. But we'll get back there. Let's move on to our next book, which is Excalibur, one of the only books I've read because it's got Gambit and Rogue on it, and I love them. Chinny Howard and Marcus too, and then Wilton Santos. Betsy Braddock is not Psylocke anymore. It's Captain Britain time. They deal with her with Otherworld and her shitty brother Jamie. Apocalypse has daddy energy in this one, and it's got D&D vibes.
Yes, actually, that hits the nail on the head if you were selling this book to people.
What would we be doing? Oh,
So
and
Excal-
leads into X of Swords. There we go. I knew there was one more.
So, what's really cool about this book, it's written by Tiny Howard and Marcus Toe. Betsy is no longer a Psylocke because Quantity has been resurrected.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
I think that's next.
She passes the title to Quantin, and she is now, after some dumb nonsense happens in the book, she is now Captain Britain. She takes
yeah, but nobody likes it.
Because
Yeah.
Not people like Captain, like Britain hates it. They're like, what the fuck is
yes, because they're soft allies in the beginning to Krakoa, but the idea of a Captain Britain being a mutant, which is weird because she's been Captain Britain before, but whatever.
But also, she's like not really a mutant, right? Or is
No,
she
she is.
still a
No,
mutant?
she's mutant.
Okay.
No, she's
Yeah,
mutant.
she's definitely still a mutant. I
Okay.
agree. I kind of agreed with Britain on this stance. Not gonna lie, it's very
Oh,
few
wow.
times that I did. Yeah, I was not a super huge fan of like Betsy
The big
as I don't.
Brexit fan over here.
Bro, I was ready to like divorce Excalibur when Betsy became like Captain Britain. I don't know. I feel like magic, especially particularly with the X-Men and mutants, is really poorly developed, and I feel like it was a fun book once again, like like Marauders, but I kind of feel like I don't know. I've always seen Betsy as this. I I I always feel like Captain Britain has always been like collegiate and kind of just stuffy. And
Yeah,
I feel
Brian
like
is in this book throughout almost the entire thing. Brian is still palling around. He has a big role in
Yeah.
X of Swords. So it's weird that they're just like, hey, it's Betsy now.
yeah, like
The reality is, they were making Brian retire because he had Megan and he had they just had a daughter, and they were doing like the family send off for him.
Yeah, and then they didn't.
And then yeah, exactly.
and then it was like that, it's like the person that retires, but they're still like a consultant.
Oh, for
Yeah.
And I
sure.
feel like
That's
it's
exactly
kind
what
of like
Brian was.
yeah, like he never really like he may have given up the title, but he was still like there. So it's just like
Right.
to me, it's just like okay, well, we didn't want Betsy to be Psylocke anymore because we have Quan back now, and we need to do something with her because she's still a pretty popular character.
Yeah,
So
she
let's
couldn't
make her
be
Captain.
like what other name would she have? Her powers are just the purple, the pinky purple stuff, right? I couldn't tell you what it's called.
She's a telekinetic.
Yeah, she's a
Telekinetic?
telekinetic and
Okay.
telepathic. She got it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what would her other superhero name be if it wasn't Captain Britain? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
Well, and that's why I feel like honestly, this was kind of the perfect opportunity to explore a kind of like Betsy story of identity
Well,
because
they
I feel like
try, and Tinny Howard does a pretty good job at nailing Betsy down for a while, and then I feel like, as everything in this era, which we'll get to, it slows
it
to a
spins
grinding
wildly.
halt after Inferno.
Yes. But yes, it is. You get a big one of the big standout things of this book is that Richter gets a big role and a big glow
Oh
up.
yeah. Oh, by the way, if you guys don't think Richter is going to be the heir to Apocalypse, y'all ain't reading the book right. I'm just saying.
Bro,
He's
Yeah.
groomed, not to be weird. He's groomed in this entire Krakoan era to be Apocalypse's little homie. And then they do this new book, Heir to Apocalypse, and they're like, "There's 12 guys, and Richter's in there." It's like, well, it's gonna be Richter, right? Can't not be Richter. Otherwise, what's he doing?
It should
I mean,
choose out.
there were kind of some random folks in there too. Like,
Yeah, I
if
know,
we
like
definitely get to
X-23 for
that,
some
I was just
reason.
like, Monet, what are you doing here?
I think
They
they just
explain
needed
all-
to put some
No.
characters that weren't on teams around. They were like,
No, I
what are you
know.
doing?
They do explain why each of them are on there by issue
Yeah,
2.
yeah, of
I
course.
just read issue 2 today.
Mhm.
But yeah, sorry, back to Excalibur before we go to tangents because remember this is actually really long and we just keep forgetting we're only on to Excalibur.
Oh no, I totally understand. Oh, and in the first volume, they go to Otherworld. In the second volume, they hunt those little lizard guys. That's kind of what it is. And then it leads into X of Swords with the Saturnine, not Saturnine. Yeah,
Saturn
Saturnine.
9.
yes.
Yeah,
Saturn
she's
9.
around.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Opal Luna Saturn 9. But yes,
Okay.
Apocalypse is now like a Sorcerer Supreme and Mutant Magic, which is weird.
Yeah, he goes by A or
uh,
whatever.
Yeah. Jubilee has mommy issues.
And she drops her kid off as a dragon, which I wholeheartedly disagree with
We all do.
on an entire level. It's okay.
And yes, we have Jubilee and it's not Jubilee. Rogue and Gambit as like kind of
The
just
power couple. They hang out for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
We'll get into why they don't hang out for the whole time.
Yep. But really, one of the big standout characters is Apocalypse, Betsy, and Richter, because Apocalypse now has this whole kind of magic era to him. Richter now has a glow up in power besides just
Yeah, he's a
being.
druid now, I believe. Or that's what
Yes.
he's classified
No.
as in D&D terms.
Yeah, no, he's a druid in the book too. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
classified
yeah,
as
I know.
a druid.
They have
And
a whole druid
Psylocke.
arc in the first one too.
Exactly, and Betsy becoming Captain Britain, these are all evolutions of characters that have been kind of stagnant. And especially if you were going to make Apocalypse a good guy, you had to give him something more than just like survival of the fittest.
Yeah, and putting him on a team with Gambit is very cool. Gambit wasn't originally supposed to be on the team, and then he's like, "Oh, Apocalypse is there? Nah, I ain't letting you hang out anywhere near these
Exactly.
people without me."
Exactly. And again,
So,
it's
very
this is
cool.
the X-Men with superheroes with magic story. So again, if you like D&D, if you like magic, stuff like that, that's kind of what this book is catered towards. And it does give Otherworld more of a little more peek into Otherworld because it kind of always gets sidelined, and we see it only through Saturn Nine's point of view most of the time. And this is besides the original Excalibur series that Claremont did. This is the first time that Excalibur actually explores Otherworld again, and it is a throwback to the Claremont era. I like it a lot. It's a really solid story, but out of 5, I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
Definitely still sticking to like 3.5 vibes on this. Only because like I'm very particular about like how magic is in the Marvel universe, and I feel like it gives strong D&D vibes, and I enjoy D&D. Definitely love playing it. Love playing as different characters, but I feel like it just adds to like the jankiness that is magic in Marvel. Like,
Yeah, if you're not reading Doctor Strange, you don't know what's going on. And then they have this new
yeah.
Gods thing, also by Hickman. Like, oh, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to the next bit, which is New Mutants. We got 2 volumes here. Each volume 1, if you could read those. Hickman and Rod Reyes are on volume 1, and Ed Brisson and Flaviano Marcofilia are here. In the first volume, Magic and the OGs plus Mondo and Chamber head to space with the Starjammers, and they do space stuff. And Armor and Glad babysit some youths, is what the Wikipedia said. I think Boom Boom's there. I couldn't tell you who that is, but I think this is Boom Boom.
Yeah, it is Boom Boom.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely is.
She gets left behind because she's, Boom Boom. So she hangs out with Glob and Armor.
So both books, the problem with this book, why it's both volume 1, it was supposed to be like, it goes Hickman, then Brisson, Hickman, then Brisson, Hickman.
Oh, yeah, they
Brisson,
were taking turns.
reading
But when
order.
they collected them, they collected them in 1 and 1.
Right. So the New Mutants. The reason why Mondo and Chamber are on the team, they were part of Gen X. And they're similar age. And Chamber and Mondo, because they're all similar ages to that team.
Magic and
yeah. So they just moved them over there.
And our boy Doug.
And it's supposed to set up. It was supposed to set up this whole thing. With it sets up Sunspot in space and him and why he's like he was supposed to eventually be the Emperor of the Shi'ar. That was originally Hickman's plan.
For Sunspot?
Yes.
That'd be cool.
That'd be interesting.
And he was supposed to be married to Deathbird, and they were supposed to take over the Shi'ar Empire. But then another book happens, which kind of puts it, a little
which
hole
was kind
in
of
that.
like no.
And we'll talk about that book if it's on the list.
It should be, as long as it was X-Men related.
And it is X-Men related.
Yeah.
And so that book kind of puts a hole in that kind of plot. And the other books, the other New Mutants, the Everest and New Mutants, it was meant to showcase all the other kids that are
it was
now
kind of like the Morrison era New Mutants.
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of like a bunch of the weird guys in armor are here.
Right. Because that's what it is. It was supposed to be like the 2 French kids that they got from the run right beforehand. Glob, because he's a standout from the Morrison era.
I love
Armor,
because he's
Armor,
also very popular.
right. Armor,
boy.
who's from Whedon's Astonishing X-Men, and Boom Boom.
Yeah.
And that really cool X-Men anime.
Yes, and Boom Boom, because they needed a protege character to be like, oh, I'm the mature one, but she's not.
Yeah, I love Boom Boom every time she pops up as kind of like, I'm supposed to be the mom, like for the X-Force run before the Krakoan era where she's basically babysitting Kid Cable. I love that Boom Boom. She's hilarious.
But yeah, so that's really what this book is. And that's why when it was coming out monthly, I hated it coming out monthly because I hated the reading order because I was getting half a story. I was getting a story every 2 months.
Yeah, it was like reading the original Wonder Woman from Rebirth, where it's just like every other issue. It's like, what are we doing?
Right. But I liked the OG New Mutants together. I always like when they're together. In fact, I like this version better because they are in space doing like.
I think the only one who's not around is Cannonball because he's doing Avengers World Shi'ar stuff.
Yes, because he's on Chandelar.
Yeah, he pops up, but he's just not like a main character.
Yeah, because he's married to Smasher.
Adam Smasher,
no, just Smasher. And they have a daughter. They have a kid. So he's living in space with their son. That's why they're also going to space and doing like New Mutant stuff. Um, it's cool. I just hated the every other issue thing,
Mhm.
and of course, when you find out like the plot was supposed to be eventually for Roberto to become king of the Shi'ar, and it goes nowhere. You're like, what the hell is
Yeah, it's
this?
crazy. New Mutants has 3 volume ones in like the first era. It's not. It's crazy.
I know, I know.
And for me, I'm really like an OG fan, so I love like the OG New Mutants team. I always like the different selection of powers and the different selection of personalities that you have. So it was fun every other issue for me.
Oh, that's fair, and that's what it
Like,
is. Again, if they were, if the way they should have really done this was to launch just the Hickman New Mutants first, and
mm,
then let them do that story, and then do Brisson's like, oh hey, we're going to stay in space for now. Now, like, all right, the year in space, we're going to continue New Mutants, but focus on the younger actual New Mutants of Krakoa. That would have been the better story to tell. Um, in that order instead of getting, all right, I don't care about Glob and the two French kids and Armor and Boom Boom being like mommy. I don't like that story. Like go back to classic New Mutants doing
Bring me back to
actual X
space,
Men stuff.
please.
Well, yeah, 'cause I want actual them to like grow up, and that's always been like their deficit is that they never have them grow up, and when
Mhm.
they do, they did that in the um not this I would say Dysphoria. It's not Dysphoria. Manifest Destiny era,
Mhm.
where they
mm.
actually had their own team and like X-Men joined them and everything. They were actually a team and did things. They weren't just like they weren't just like the kids that we forget about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, like I always see them as like the one random one-off team. Like, just like you can even say like the Young Avengers are kind of just like that one random one-off team that has their own adventures while like all this crazy stuff is happening with the X-verse. So like they're not actual X-Men, but they're still like a solid team within that group. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
I think that's why I always like them, and I think that's why I like them in this, and I think that's why I didn't like the newer generation because, like, the one thing that I really liked about New Mutants is, especially during that sort of like Gen X era, is that they kind of became a team because they were all in proximity to each other, and they all had
That's the
all
best.
this.
That's a D&D vibe right
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of like
Y'all become buddies
grew.
because you're hanging out in the bar and zombies attack or whatever.
Exactly. And that was like that's kind of been the glue to their like whole team. Whereas like, this new gen was kind of just like, oh, okay, well we're having like stupid little adventures where we're being parented because we're like not old enough or mature enough to like do other things. Whereas like I feel like the New Mutants, they kind of had like a lot of mature adventures happening, including rescuing magic from Limbo. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. Inferno is a good story. Um
Yeah.
and that's the whole point. Like I think the thing they run into, especially with this team, was like I think it was more of one of these books feels like an editorial book, and one of them feels like an actual plot line that was supposed to be part of New Mutant of Krakoa.
Yeah.
And it looks like the younger generation one was more of like, hey, you need not just do all this OG stuff because people may not follow because not everyone reads the New Mutants, the original New Mutants. Um, so yeah, that's kind of it does get
Yeah,
that vibe.
I'm a
Like
big fan of Glob, Armor, and that
because
kind
you're
of New Mutants
12.
because that was that was my era of comic books at least.
And
And then don't get me wrong, I like Magic. She's got a midriff. We fuck with it. But I like Doug a lot. Doug is awesome. Douglock, he's my boy. He gets a lot of play in this because he can speak to Krakoa, which is another reason why Mondo is here because he's got Krakoa like on his belly, like
because
Patrick. I'm Pat back.
because he can teleport. That's why.
Mondo can teleport. Or are you talking
Because
about Krakoa?
Krakoa, because they had the gate.
Okay, I was like, Mondo's a
and like
tree man, kind of. He's like dirt with rocks on him. That's like his whole thing.
and I
He's like
really
Swamp Thing, but for kids.
and I really enjoyed Armor as a character. Trust me,
I
really
love
loved
Armor.
her
She's
introduction
basically a
in
mech speak
Astonishing
character. That's
X-Men.
so cool. Oh
But
yeah.
and her power is interesting, but I'm always just like every team that she's placed on, for some reason, she always just feels out of place. Like even in her introduction in Astonishing X-Men, it kind of just felt like I'm this new girl, and that's the role that I serve here. And in every other kind of um team that she's been placed on, it just feels like she is kind of a little bit of an outsider.
She does. She does feel that way a lot. It's really weird.
Yeah, which is sad because I really like her as a character.
I know. I know. It's. I feel the same way. It's.
Yeah, I'm a big Armor fan as well. I like that she's basically just a mech suit character. And yeah, it is weird that every time they put her on a team, she's kind of just around. Like, especially during the Colors era. She's on X-Men Gold, I think.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because. Also with Ink, that tattoo man who...
I love it. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up.
James
He's not
doesn't
even
like
real.
Ink.
He's not even a real mutant.
He's not. Shut up.
All right, let's move on to the next book. Then we got X-Force. Heck yeah. Benjamin
Yeah.
Percy with Joshua Cassara. Wolverine and Beast lead the Spec Ops team. We gave Beast power again. Have we not learned? Colossus is sus, and I couldn't find a Colossus one, but I found a Wolverine one. So Colossus does a lot of weird suspect business with his brother.
Yes,
That's like an
Malachi,
evil
yes.
dictator or something.
Yes,
I'm
Malachi.
not well versed in the Malachi. He showed up in X-Men Legends 2, I think, and that's all I've seen him in.
Okay. So X-Force spins out of one of the issues of X-Men in which Charles Xavier is killed, and they have to. Jean has to use the Cerebro helmet to bring back and resurrect Xavier. That's also was to split the body of Xavier from the body of Phantom X, because at the point of House of Powers, he was still in the body of Phantom X. Jean then they then build the Cerebro sword, which is sought after by Malachi. Something's going on at this point. We didn't know in the book. Something was going on with Malachi and Colossus, but the team is Black Tom Cassidy, who is kind of their like liaison between Krakoa and the team. Sage, who is their tech woman in the chair. Beast and Wolverine. You have Domino as their fighter or their gunslinger. You have Colossus as their bruiser, Wolverine as their knife guy, and Jean was supposed to be the heart and soul. Well, that's what it is.
Did you just describe Wolverine as the knife guy?
Yes. And Jean
Sure,
Grey was,
that's him, knife guy.
and Jean is supposed to be. Oh, Kid Omega.
He's
Is
around.
he's in the team as a field op, and Jean is not a field op. She's supposed to be just like communications.
Jean is like in volume 1 of every single book and then disappears because she's got shit to do.
Yeah, well,
That's
she's an actual
basically
X-Man.
Jean's whole personality. And, like,
She's like, I
whole
got shit to do.
position. She's like, y'all good, right? I gotta go.
Yeah, she makes her appearance, she gets her fee, and then she leaves.
Yeah.
She really does.
No, she's on she's on a bunch of covers. She's even on like a Wolverine cover somewhere in here. It's nuts. She's everywhere.
But yes, so the entire story is about them going after an organization that was able to break into Krakoa.
Yeah,
'Cause
3
Krakoa
months in, they dive in there with Domino skin and fuck shit up.
yeah, so that's the
Yeah,
whole
we're
thing. They don't
curious,
know
George.
they don't know how and why these people were able to break into Krakoa, but they figured out that they were able to peel Domino's skin off her body and graft it to themselves. The geneticist or genothist, something like that.
Geneticist.
No, it's not geneticist. It's Geno. It's something stupider than that. It's very stupid, made up name with genes and science, whatever. He's the guy with the peacock mask, with the peacock tattoo. He's an old school X-Men villain. I won't spoil it here. We'll talk about it later when they find out. But yeah, they are now it becomes a war. It's also supposed to be like a CIA take and treat the X-Force like more like instead of it being a black ops squad, they are the CIA of Krakoa. They go in, investigate, and also fight if they have to. Outlying threats to Krakoa by other nations. That's where you get the things like what happens with Beast in South America, where they kind of mind wipe the entire nation into being allies with Krakoa.
Yeah, Beast gets up to some stuff in this book.
It's
We'll
the
get to it later on, but Beast is a menace, dude.
And it starts here. So it's Terra Verde incident
Mhm.
where he mind wipes his whole nation to become allies with Krakoa. And they're like,
Beast
you
is
can't
like so.
do
I
that.
kind of like how they have Beast and Wolverine as kind of contrasting forces here. with Beast and Wolverine both super into Charles's ideals, but they take vastly different approaches. Wolverine is kind of like, yeah, eventually they'll fucking deal with it, and Beast is like, nah, let's do it now. And he's like,
Yeah.
let's just fuck with everybody. Beast is chaotic.
But it is also the eventual birth and evolution of what Beast is. Of the 5 children of the original 5 X-Men, he is the one that is not leaned on at all by Xavier in a sense of his dream. Like he does, like Scott and Jean are Scott's dream, is Charles's dream made manifest.
Yeah,
Um,
two mutants falling in love and starting mutant families. That's kind of the stuff for
yes.
them. Iceman and Angel, whatever. But
Well, no,
Beast
no,
is like kind of the
Angel.
redheaded stepchild
Well, no,
of
because like,
the original 5.
because Beast always was in and out of the X-Men, so much so that he wasn't even in the tail
Yeah, he
end of
pops
the
in the
original
Avengers for a
X-Men.
while
He
too.
was part of the X-Men. He was
Yeah.
part of the Avengers.
Mhm.
Early on, I just reread it in my X-Men box, in my Avengers box set. I'm like, ugh, yeah, Beast was part of the Avengers. And then you have Angel, who has his own issues becoming Archangel, and then Iceman is nothing. They made them an Omega, and they made him come out of the closet to make him useful in the X-Men, I
Oh
guess,
yeah, we'll
because
get there.
they had to give him something. Um, but yeah, that's the whole thing. So like seeing Beast become this broken version of the dream is like, all right, cool. We have this dream, we have the nation. Now we have to maintain it, and I will do whatever it takes to maintain the status quo of this new mutant nation. And being in charge of the CIA he's J. Edgar Hoover. That's the whole thing.
I actually took a different take on Beast. I was
Oh
kind
yeah.
of just like, okay, so up until this point, the one thing that Beast always had above anything else was his like ethics. Like he was a scientist through and through. That was his whole thing. Is that he would generally be like the ethical X-Man. Like it was very hard to put him in a position where he's going to take like a non-ethical route to things, which is
Until
why
later on, when
well,
he
and
just
that's
like
why
it's like
when
the
we
Dark
had
Beast
Age
era when he starts getting crazy.
yeah, well, that's why in Age of Apocalypse it was so crazy having Dark Beast because
Mhm.
Dark Beast was the antithesis of that. He was like a scientist with zero ethics, like Sinister. So, that's why they had very big contrast there. So it's very interesting kind of seeing up until this point that Beast has been a particularly ethical person and that hasn't gotten him far. Like his friends are still always in danger, people have still always died, things have still always happened. And then now you have this Genosian dream, which is kind of just this like new utopia for mutants. And being ethical up until that point has not netted them anything good. So now he's wading into the waters of maybe not being so ethical will get them forward. So I always thought that that was an interesting kind of dynamic.
I get it, but the thing is, like with this, I've seen this, and the only reason why I have a little bit of a different take on it is like we saw what Beast did when he was able to get his hands on things like the legacy virus. He sold a girl to Sinister to be able to cure the legacy virus. You know, he went during Secret Invasion. He retrofitted this legacy virus to then kill Skrulls. You know, this has been the long road from the dark. It was the long road to Dark Beast that we never finish. You know what I mean? Like it's like everything. Like this, he is the saying absolute power corrupts absolutely, because even though he thinks he is morally and ethically that he's ethically right, he doesn't matter. He doesn't care what morals he has to question, because like even during Extinction Agenda, he not Extinction Agenda, post M Day, he was making deals with villains to bring back mutant kind, and he was willing. It's so much so that he teamed up with Dark Beast in the Messiah era to try to bring back mutant kind. I think the problem with Beast as a character, not a problem with Beast as a character. I actually love the evolution of him becoming the darker take, and he just keeps throwing away more and more of his morals to be like, yeah, it's fine. Sorry, more and more of his ethics to be like, no, it's right as long as the dream happens. And this is like the complete culmination of that, at least up to this point, where you see like, oh well, he has become broken, and and this is only the linchpin of what we'll see as the Krakoa
Oh
goes
yeah, he
on.
gets crazy.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, he
But
has
in the
like a craving
beginning,
darkness.
right. And so in this era to see like the Terra Verde thing go down after the whole thing with the peacock, and go, yeah, well, at least we're fine, and we have a new ally nation, but we had to sacrifice people in order to do that, and they're all even within the team, they're keeping secrets from each other. You know, it is very much how like the CIA tends to operate sometimes, and it's really cool, and I like this book a lot. And I will get
This is
tangenty
one of
more
the
as we go
longest
along.
running books in the Krakoa era. I believe I touch upon that later on the second or third volumes, third or fourth volume slides, where I'm like, this is a really long book or whatever. But let's move on to the next
Oh wait, I'm
bit.
giving it a 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Again, a lot of strong stuff at the beginning. Everything is good at the beginning.
Everything starts off really, really well. Then
All right, let's get to the next bit. Fallen Angels. Woo woo. This one is done by Brian Edward Hill. He's a TV guy with Simon Kredansky on art. It was delayed and cut short due to Hill's TV schedule. We learned that during one of the Cerebro episodes, actually.
Yes.
This is the Quanon book and sets up the best book of the Krakoan era, but we'll get there.
So okay,
I didn't read this one. I'm not gonna lie.
I
I
have
read
the
the first
entire
issue of
series.
every single one, but
It's
after
only
that,
6 issues. I have
yeah,
the
I know.
entire series. 'Cause I bought it because it's Kid Cable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll talk about Kid Cable.
Yeah.
Kid
So
Cable.
I know. So this book is meant to be a setup for a different story. That becomes Hellions. But it was supposed to be something else
we'll get there.
entirely. But it is the Quanon book. It is the Kid Cable book. It was the X-23 book. It was meant to be kind of like, what are we going to do with the people that have counterparts in the universe, and putting them together, under the eye of Quanon. You have X-23, who's not Wolverine yet in the series. You have Cable, who has there is no adult Cable yet, because we haven't gotten to that point yet. But he is lost, and now he's time displaced, living with his parents he never had before.
Yeah, he's a hypocrite. Extermination. Cough, cough.
Yeah, I know. And then Quanon, who's now been resurrected, and taking over the mantle of Psylocke.
Yeah, and this is X-23 right after the all new Wolverine stuff and the Honey
Yes.
Badger stuff, or Badger, whatever she's called.
Honey Badger.
This is X-23 not knowing what to do with herself, basically, now that Wolverine is kind of doing everything.
Yes,
As he tends to.
yeah, it is a great story, and it's a great concept of like lost people in an age where you have paradise, and it's a great concept. Also, the sinister story is that he's holding Quanon's daughter hostage in this giant matrix thing, because she can't be resurrected because she wasn't a mutant. So he has her brain is a computer thing, and then they're sent out to go be assassins, and that's all they think they're good at too, because they're all killers. So they're not only are they lost souls, yes, they're not only are they lost souls, but they're killers. And how do you justify living in a parasite? Right. So how do you just put that in juxtaposition to a living in a paradise where you don't fit in, type of thing?
And
So
oh, God.
Okay, good. That was it.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and I feel like each one of those characters really had a big chip on their shoulder. Like you still had like Quanon, who, you know, had the whole thing with Betsy being Psylocke. You have Kid Cable, who has the legacy of adult Cable to deal with, and you have X-23, who constantly has the legacy of Wolverine to deal with. So, not only are they just, people who are lost, they are people who are lost, like you were saying before, who have like a somewhat more important like counterpart that they've been living in the shadow of this entire time. So it's interesting to see how they kind of rectify or come to terms with that, and that's what I found interesting about this series.
Again, it's one of the books that does get lost when we talk about the Krakoa era, because people tend to forget that exists.
Because it was one of the first books, and it was unfortunately cut short due to Brian Edward Hill just being too involved with whatever show he had going on. I wish I knew, but I forget. But he's a big TV guy.
Yeah, so that's kind of like it. If he didn't cut the book short, I really would like to have seen where he really wanted the story to go. But because of that, we do end up with Hellions later on. I do I do
It was a
wish.
good like sword to fall on if we had to fall on anything.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right. So we do get a good ending to these, and what happens to all these characters? Something does happen to all these characters.
They all get put on teams.
Right. And we'll talk
That's
about
what
each
happens.
one of those.
Basically, yeah, they were
Exactly.
just like, "Oh, well, are you guys done dealing with your bullshit? We need you on teams."
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're basically
exactly.
just like, you guys got over your own character arcs. All right, join something. Go
Yeah,
join
exactly.
a club. You guys are sad. Go join a club.
Yeah. So that's the
kind
whole
of what
thing.
this book is.
It is, and that's what kind of I wish we like he would say something like in an interview or whatever. It's kind of like, oh, hey, this is how it would have ended, but it's fine.
I
Again,
think he did. I think he is on one of the episodes of Cerebro. Go back and check. It's an
I
older
will.
one
You know I
because it
will.
was
You know I will.
like, during this era. But yeah, no, they talk about Fallen Angels, Brian Edward Hill. It might even be on. I don't know if the Chronic Boys, the Comics and Chronic Boys, talked with Brian Edward Hill. I know they were doing a bunch of interviews, so maybe just go look out for the interviews. He said something. I remember that's why I found the delayed due to the schedule. They said something somewhere. So
Yeah,
it was supposed to be like an ongoing. It wasn't supposed
it
to be
was.
6 issues. It was supposed to be 12 at least. They said.
Oh, that would have been
So,
cool.
yeah. But let's get on to the next. We got Wolverine. He starts halfway through following the first volume of the X-Force. This one's still done by Percy, keeping it together. He's got Adam Kubert and Victor Bogdanovic on this one. It's kind of its own thing, like I said, still tied to everything. Longest running Krakoan title without a renumbering. Bub. Yeah, Bub.
Yes.
So yeah, this is the first 7 issues. I think issues 6 and 7 are tied to
X of Swords.
X of Swords. So let's not talk about those too much. But 1 through 7 are technically the part of the dawn of X. So yeah, Wolverine. It's good. I don't know. I like this book. This is my favorite book throughout the entire era. So.
What was the first 6 issues about?
Yeah, I was like,
kind of what he's
it.
doing.
Of course.
It's just he shows up on Krakoa. He does some stuff. It's loosely tied to X-Force, and then it sets up Maverick to come back as this big kind of overarching character.
Yeah,
the Krakoan era for Wolverine. I talk about Maverick in a few slides later.
So I'm like, I don't remember what that book was about.
Because it started halfway through, and then the last 2 issues of the era are tied to events. So really, just the first 5 is just kind of Wolverine's new status quo on Krakoa and kind of what he does. He visits Blob. He gets a lot of alcohol from Kitty. He's just kind of hanging out, doing Wolverine stuff.
Actually, I'm looking it up right now.
I was about to say, yeah, because I don't think I've ever. I mean, I'm not a super huge Wolverine fan, so I'm like,
I'm getting there. This book, the latter half of this book, really got me into it. So I don't know. The beginning was a little rough, but as it got through and through, Percy just kept hitting it home.
Oh, I know what this one is. Okay, cool. I looked it up. Thank God. It is the setup. It's a tie to X-Force. The first 5 issues are tied to X-Force with the flower.
That's what I said.
Yes.
That's what I said.
It was setting up the Omega Red stuff to him to join the team later.
Oh yeah, Omega Red too. I forgot about him.
Yes.
Maverick comes up.
Red.
Maverick comes up before Omega Red, and then Omega Red comes up like halfway through. Yeah. That's why I got.
Yeah.
Because Omega Red, because Omega Red is banished before Krakoa even opens. They're like, nah, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Him and Sabretooth, they're basically just like in the dungeon.
I mean,
yeah,
facts though. Like, I'm not gonna lie. If there were ever irredeemable mutants, those would be my first 2.
Yeah, those are some pretty bad ones, but we'll get to both of them later on.
Yes.
You guys got any final thoughts on Wolverine before we move on?
It's Percy and it's awesome.
Exactly.
Wolverine.
Well, also the reason why it's really good because it does tie in very closely to X-Force, and because Percy's writing both those books, it flows very well together.
Oh yeah, he writes both of them for the entirety, so he keeps it consistent throughout the whole thing, which is probably the reason why X-Force and Wolverine are like everybody complains about the Krakoa era, but nobody complains about Wolverine and X-Force. They're just like, yeah, these are okay.
Yeah.
It's because it's Wolverine and X-Force. I mean, even pre-Krakoan era, like I said, not a particular Wolverine fan, but I followed X-Force religiously because it was just good.
Yeah.
All right. The next stuff, we got Cable 1 through 6. This is written by Duggan again. Duggan is a huge player in Krakoa. Obviously, we'll get there with Phil Noto, who's also pretty big. He's got spy vibes on this one. Young Cable is involved a lot near the beginning of the Krakoan age. I wonder why. It's almost like he's going to be old soon. And that's all I got on Cable. The first 6 issues, it ties into
X-Swords.
It ties into X-Men, X of Swords, and Fallen Angels, and then talks about the Space Knights. So this book's like a lot going on.
So it opens up with him getting a sword from space, which will tie into X of Swords. It also is a fallout from Fallen Angels because Fallen Angels ends, and then this starts only like shortly around the same time. It also explains like it's the now Cable has his family. What are we going to do with this kid? Who's this mega spy? And it's him tracking down. Was it this arc or later on? It was with the Inferno kids.
No, this is the Inferno Kids. It's the whole 12
Yes.
issues that are in there, except for the one that ties into X of Swords.
Yeah, so it's him investigating it, investigating the Inferno kids, the kids that would have been sacrificed, like he was supposed to be sacrificed when he was a kid, and what happened to all of them. And yeah, so there's a lot of spy vibes. It's him going undercover and trying to figure out what happened to all these kids that were supposed to die the same day he was supposed to die as a child.
Yeah, so it feels like a James Bond book, which is good.
It is.
Yeah, it definitely is.
You know, but it's again going back to what I was saying. This is the X-Men and formula that works very well. It's X-Force and spy stuff, you know, and it's done very well with the character that we get to see. A version of Cable we've never seen before, besides Extermination.
Exactly.
You know, we never got to see him grow up. Armor's also in this book.
Everybody's in this book.
Yeah, tying into the New Mutant stuff to one of the Cuckoos is also in this book later on.
Yeah, because he's dating one of them.
He's dating one of the Cuckoos, which I thought was really weird.
He's dating the one that pops up on X-Force for a minute. I think it's Sophie or Phoebe. Okay.
Because Quentin's with one of them. That's
okay.
And they all share a mind, which is also really weird when you think about it.
I mean, but like, nice.
But is it when they're dating two people?
I mean,
they're like the 5 in 1 again. So
I mean, they're both dating like the same guy. If you really think about it, it's Twink with weird hair and powers. Like,
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
psychic Twink with weird hair and powers.
Yeah, they both got like some psychic twinks going on. So that's kind of what they're into.
Like, you know, for me, I kind of really enjoyed it because it was like Cable with swag. Like, we've always seen him as like a grizzled
swinging
soldier
around
the entire but it's like he has the like 007 swag, and I thought that was really, really fun.
Yeah, I wish they played more into it, but this one only got 12 issues, and then Cable was thrown around for a while, and then hello, Benjamin Button comes back.
But the scenes we do get with him and Jean and
his mom
are amazing.
It's all pretty cool. X of Swords the X of Swords Cable tie-in is probably the best. Probably the best book in the X of Swords. I think it's the Cable tie-in. It's whatever Cable's story arc is in X of Swords, because like he's getting beat up and then he's like, "Mom, Dad, I need help," and Scott and Jean are like, "Let's fucking go." Very cool. And we'll get to that when we get to X of Swords. This is a lot to talk about for X of Swords. We're already an hour in. We got to keep this train moving. Let's get on to the Hellions. Pre-ASM Zeb Wells with Steven Segovia. Suicide Squad, but with X-Men. Best Krakoan title, Fight Me, is Sinister. All right, James, what do you got to say about only the first 6 issues of this book?
Okay, you know I love this book. It's my favorite X-Men book of Krakoa. It is the Suicide Squad of X-Men. It is all the people that were supposed to be put to the pit because they've all broken one of the laws of Krakoa. You have Scalp Hunter, the guy's name changed to Grey Crow because Scalp Hunter is a derogatory term.
Super racist.
Let's do Grey Crow.
So Grey Crow is joins the team.
Also, a much cooler name, Grey Crow.
Yes,
yeah,
he's very cool.
The reason why he constantly gets why he's supposed to be on the pit is because he constantly kills mutants on the island. Where they always come and fight him because of what he did as a marauder. Yeah, because he was a marauder. So he constantly kills him. So that's why he was supposed to be at the pit. Wild Child again is untamed. So he is also in the pit. Nanny and Orphan Maker are only there because Orphan Maker's powers are uncontrollable, and Nanny wants to kidnap more children and bring them to her orphanage, and so that's why she's on the team. And Orphan Maker never leaves Nanny's side. Empath is on there because he's a complete mess of a character.
Yeah, he's the OG Hellion too.
I love
right?
him.
Yes, he is. He's the only Hellion that's a Hellion.
Yeah, actually.
You have Havoc on the team because he killed a person while in battle outside on a mission with Scott and his X-Men team, the early X-Men team.
I killed a guy once.
Yeah, and because he broke Krakoan law, so he has to do it. You have Psylocke on the team on the behest of Mr. Sinister to watch all of them and wrangle the team together as their squad leader, and Sinister as their actual commander because they voted on it and Magneto changed his vote last minute to make Sinister the leader because he pissed Magneto off in the opening of issue 1.
Yeah, so he's like, you know what? Fuck you. Join the Suicide Squad team, you dick.
Yep.
Go
And that's
have
why-
fun. And he's like, damn.
And that's why Sinister leads this squad of miscreants, and this team is amazing. I love this team. The first 6 issues are a prelude to X of Swords.
But they do tie up a lot of the
Yes.
loose ends that Fallen Angels needed to tie
Yes.
up with Quanen's story to finish it up. And then, yeah, it ties all together the other characters. Havoc really has like a strong play here. So,
Yes.
very cool.
It's actually fantastic. I love this team a
But
lot.
we'll get to talk more about the Hellions later because the rest of it is all in one zone as we
Yes.
get there. Next up, we got X Factor. All right, this is where we're going to get a little toasty here, boys. And this is going to be a recurring bit. You'll see what I mean. Leah Williams with David Baldian, Polaris and company solve murders and make sure that they can resurrect the right people, starting with Aurora.
Polaris. Oh,
Yeah.
Aurora.
No,
Yeah.
Aurora,
Yeah. And then we have Dakin, who was described by Leah Williams as a fucky thought enforcer. So I wanted to kind of highlight just a little bit of that energy that we got going on with Dakin. We'll get to it later. So, by the way, these characters, only 3 of them continue to show up consistently, and one of them will surprise you.
So
What do you guys think about the first 4 issues of X Factor? I know that it's only 4 issues, so it's not a lot to talk about, but the issue 1 kind of covers a lot of nonsense.
Yes. It actually sets up a great premise in which they have to go solve murders to make sure they can resurrect, because there is a backup in the queue, because the 5 can't go out and investigate all these people are claiming that their relatives are
Because they got to
dead.
be protected, because if they die, they can't do nothing.
Right. So they're like, well, we have to make sure they're resurrected, but we don't want. So at this point, there is a policy on Krakoa that you can't have there's no clones of Krakoa, even though there are.
Yeah, but they're only clones genetically, not literally.
No, they're useful clones. That's why. That's
Well, yeah, like
Havoc's
Badger
whole
and
right. Laura,
Laura.
the cuckoos.
Yeah.
But
There's a few other clones, but the
yeah.
important ones are here.
But it's a great premise, and but falls short 100% as the series goes on. But it's a wonderful premise that they start off with.
I think the biggest problem with X Factor is because of its short length, it had so many tie-ins. It ties both into, and this is a common theme across the age of Krakoa, where half these books, especially the short-lived ones, all have tie-ins that make it unnecessarily complicated. X Factor, the 2 volumes, 10 issues, is tied into 2 events. It's tied into X of Swords, and then it's tied into the Hellfire Gala, and then it leads directly into something else, which we'll get to later.
Right. But
it's an involved book.
Also, this is Leah Williams' gay X-Men book.
Oh, yeah. She picked a bunch of crazy
every character
enforcers.
Crazy queer enforcers, which I appreciate. Because
that's what it is. Because it's Prodigy, Rachel, North Star.
The OG.
The only 2 on the team that's not are Polaris and iBoy, and really Polaris is 50-50 sometimes.
Polaris just does whatever she wants, and we can always appreciate that. Like, I feel like she was a superstar in this book, and I've kind of I've always been a Magneto fan, and thereby I've always been kind of like, Polaris has been my favorite Magneto child back when Quicksilver and Wanda were Magneto's children. I mean, they definitely still are. He acknowledges that, but even so, I kind of like the green-haired child that was like, I am basically the living image of my father.
I'm baby Magneto, but green.
And, I always loved the premise of X Factor, even pre-Krakoa ever at time.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought it was just, such a fun book to just have, a detective agency of mutants, and they just, solve random crimes. It was super cool. And then, like you said, with this premise where it was like, oh, okay, well, we have this rule that we can't resurrect somebody unless we're sure that they're dead. We can't just say, hey, we'll resurrect this person because we think they died, and then all of a sudden that original person comes back. What do we do?
Right.
It's definitely a huge conundrum, and I like that they put together a team that could solve that.
Right.
Too bad they didn't really
ever do that.
They did it in the first 4 issues. That's for sure.
In
Because
all
they got to
Aurora.
bring back Aurora.
Yeah.
in all fairness, yeah, because North Star was just like,
Where's my sister at?
where's my sister's dead. You need to revive her.
And they're like, "Are
we can
you
do
sure
that."
about that?"
And
They're
he's
like, "Are you
like,
sure she's dead?"
I'm 100% sure she's dead. And they were like, well, bring me proof. And he was like, all right, got these people together and dumped her body in front of them. And they
Yeah.
were like, oh, okay, we'll resurrect her then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again,
And then I
it's
think
really
they find out that she's not, and then there's 2 for like an issue, and then they solve
Yeah.
that problem because one of them's like a moldy monster.
Well, you'll
I
see
don't
what happens.
remember.
There's a storyline that they do similar to this in X-Men later on.
All right,
Yeah.
so we'll get to that one more time. All right, now we're on to the mini series of the era. We are wrapping up the first part, Dawn of X, with some minis. These are going to be shorter. This is X-Men Fantastic Four with Zdarsky and the Dodsons. Don't worry, it was retconned. You don't have to read it. Empire X-Men. This had every main writer writing 1 issue of each book. Empire sucks, but this book is okay. And then Juggernaut. We got Fabian Nicienza with Ron Garney. This is the best Juggy book of all time. You can fight me on this one.
All right. So
Did you guys read
rundown
these?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I definitely read Juggernaut. I
Hell
don't think I
yeah.
read the Fantastic Four crossover or Empire.
It was
I read
okay,
Empire.
and then they're just like in Fantastic Four 26. Dan
Yeah.
Slott's like, just kidding, Franklin. You're not a mutant. Get sucked. And
Yeah.
it's like, all right.
Which
Those books don't
that
matter.
I did hear about that though, and
Yeah,
I
it does.
remember being like, "This is the stupidest fucking thing I've
And
ever."
it doesn't
in my
happen
life."
in this book. Like, so Darcy sets it up as like, well, he's an Omega level mutant, and how do we deal with this? Who doesn't want to come to Krakoa? And then Reed,
Well, it's not that he doesn't want to. It's just that
Reed doesn't
family.
let
doesn't
him.
know what he wants to do. Yeah, Reed won't let him, and that's why he goes originally. And then he's like, you
Yes.
know what? I'm going to stay with my book and not go into the X-Men Island where I'm going to
Well,
get lost in the background.
he was no, actually in the early parts of Slott's book, he was going back and forth. He was going to
Mhm.
school in Krakoa because they let him at the end of this book be a student at the school, but live at because he can use the gate to come home. And it reestablishes the relationship that Kitty and Franklin have that goes back to the original X-Men Fantastic Four crossover book that Claremont wrote. And there is a lot of nods to that. And it is Reed, they find out that Reed makes a gun that can remove mutant powers, and Xavier and Magneto mind wipe him.
Mhm.
And that becomes a point that's brought up once and never talked about again because of the retcon of him maybe not being a mutant, but he is a mutant still. They're kind of retconning it backwards again. Because there's a whole issue in Ryan North's run about Franklin dealing with his life, and he goes, no, I am a mutant. That's what my life is.
Mhm.
You
I'm
know.
glad they re-retconned. I'll add a note later for re-retcon. They fixed it. But for Empire X-Men, this is the one that had Horticulture show up again, and those they did like zombie Genosha people, which is kind of cool. So this book was like the best Empire book probably to come out because it didn't involve Empire besides the plant people coming down and the Golden Girls going, nah.
But also, the zombie Genosians are involved because Scarlet Witch is trying to resurrect the mutant island Genosha as recompense because they're like, oh, well, we can resurrect people now. And she tries it and doesn't work. And there's a bunch of zombies running around. Horticulture because they're dealing with the Cohorte, a plant-like race that lived on Hala with the Kree. They are now at war. This is part of the Empire tie-in, which Empire really didn't sell well because this is we're getting into COVID now.
Yeah, this is the COVID times. The books still come out pretty on time after the big like 6-month break that we had to deal with. You guys would remember that during our podcasting eras where we tried a bunch of different stuff and had a bunch of filler episodes.
Yes.
So very cool.
And that's the Empire book. And Juggernaut's place in Krakoa.
He's not originally there because he's technically not a mutant. So then he just goes on this journey where he kind of just like reinvents himself because he's like, I don't want to be a bad guy anymore. This shit kind of sucks. He had a very heroic slope going into the Krakoan era where, I mean, besides the X-Men one-shots and Iceman, if you read Kill Crew from Punisher after War of the Realms, and then you read... there's one more book, Savage Avengers, and then you jump into this book. This is like his good guy era coming back from where he was in the Thunderbolts. Yes. And this is basically him just getting a new status quo, and then he finds a new mutant who like I think they're called D-Cell. They can
Yes.
stop the Juggernaut by slowing them down. D-Cell ends up popping up in a bunch of Krakoan Marvel Unlimited books, as well as some more Juggernaut nonsense down the line. But James told me not to talk about Marvel Unlimited, so we're not
No, you
talking about Marvel
can.
Unlimited.
You can. I'm not stopping you.
I
It's
only
just that
talk about 2 or 3 books in Marvel
yeah, 'cause I
Unlimited.
didn't read them. That's the only reason. Like, you don't want to talk
You're
about
a
it.
poser. You're a fake fan.
I know, right? I've read
But it's
everything
all
so far.
Justin, what did you think about these books?
I really always appreciate like the one that I actually read. So for Juggernaut,
Hell yeah. The most important one on the screen.
because it was really. I'm trying to remember this correctly, so bear with me. I'm Was this the one where he like Sidorak was kind of just like, "Hey, you need to follow me,"
Oh,
and he
yeah.
was like, "No, go fuck yourself.
Yes,
I'm gonna."
Sidorak traps him in like this weird purgatory where he's just carrying his armor around as like a thin, bearded Kane Marco. And then because she's like, you know what, I am the Juggernaut, bitch. He touches like some weird Sidorakian tree, and then can now like become the Juggernaut whenever he wants without the gem or obedience of Sidorak. And they touch upon that later on in Marvel Unlimited, which I'll talk about with James later.
Which I thought was pretty interesting. I thought that was pretty fascinating
Oh
because
yeah, I love the Juggernaut in this one.
I really enjoyed the Juggernaut because as Sidorak being one of the like octessence, one of the primary deities that like, particularly in Doctor Strange, they'll call on
Yeah,
for like the
Doctor
Crimson
Strange, Crimson Band. There you
Bands
go.
of
Yeah, Crimson
Sidorak.
Band. Hell yeah.
I always hated the fact that like Juggernaut had to be subservient to him based on the gem of Sidorak, and I always wanted like after a while you could see that Juggernaut wanted better for himself, but he was just trapped in this kind of like
Yeah, this is
I
a
want to
good
be
like
good.
hurt people kind of book. It's very
Yes.
good. It's a good like therapy trauma book for anybody who, had an abusive partner or in some capacity an abusive parent of sorts. It's a
Yeah.
very good book that just kind of deconstructs the Juggernaut. And I know comic books shouldn't be about deconstructing the character. It should always be about cool stuff, but shut up. The Juggernaut's cool.
No, and this book definitely like lived up to the expectations of
Oh
that.
yeah, this is way better than it needed to be for a Juggernaut book. Like nobody expected this book to be crazy, and then people were just like, "Okay, this is crazy."
Yeah, I haven't really read like a nice deconstruction of the Juggernaut since like X-Men Legacy, so
Yeah, they
that's why I kind of
tried
really
during the
like.
Amazing X-Men during the Once and Future Juggernaut, and then after that they kind of just dropped it for a while, and
Yeah.
then they brought it back with this. Fabian Nicienzo was like, "All right, we're doing this." So very
So yeah,
cool.
no, I definitely love that. I hated the whole like Franklin Richards not being a mutant thing. I thought
that
that
doesn't
was.
happen here. It happens later
It
on.
I
happens later, but we'll
know,
get
but
there.
it still bothers me.
I know.
All right. Speaking of, let's get to the giant size X-Men. This is kind of a rapid fire. This is done by a bunch of people because these are all one shots that were collected. I didn't want to do an individual thing for them,
That's
so they
fair.
all got one big one. First one, Jean Grey and Emma Frost have themselves a mind adventure. It's mostly silent. Nightcrawler goes back to the mansion, finds a straggler, who I forget their name, leading them into his mission for Way of X, trying to find a mutant religion. Also from the pit stuff, not the pit, the crucible stuff that Apocalypse tries to do because he's a weirdo. Magneto likes lighthouses. Phantom X finds himself, and Storm is sicky wicky. That's what I got on these ones. I obviously lost traction on those last three.
Yeah,
This
I
kind
know.
of like sums it up. Magneto tries to find a spot for something.
The House of M.
Yeah, there you go. Phantom X goes into the big world thing and like kind of finds out what's going on with that.
Yeah.
And then it
So-
ties back to when he sacrificed himself for Xavier. And then Storm has some sickness that's going on, which is why she leaves Marauders in the first place and then pops into this for a minute.
Yeah. So the Jean and Ember story is the crux story of this. Especially to the Storm one. It's a play back into the Morrison story where they went into, it's like almost verbatim, just some of it's like even just it's panel to panel of them going into the mind of Storm.
Yeah, you gotta go see what's going on.
And that's what it is. She has a mind virus that's killing her, and she only has so long to live. Nightcrawler 1 is just a cold open into Way of X because he wants to find a mutant religion because he goes, oh, a new nation needs a religion, and he doesn't know how to justify things like the Crucible and his own Christianity upbringing. and put them all together in this new mutant nation.
Yeah, but we'll get to Way of X soon.
Yes, Phantom X is just kind of it's to finish off like, oh hey, Xavier. It's to finish up like, oh wait, wasn't he the part of Xavier? And like, oh no, they resurrected him alongside Xavier in X-Men issue 6. We just don't talk about it, and Xavier sends him on a mission to go, hey, go home and figure out what you want to do, and you're always welcome here, type of thing. Yeah, and Magneto likes Lighthouses because he wants to figure out his own capital on Krakoa. That's not the House of
Yeah,
X.
but don't worry, they send Magneto to space. X of Swords. Woo woo woo! Hickman and Howard with a bunch of various series artists. The Rise of Arakko, Apocalypse's Divorce Court special. Swords. Give Cyclops a sword. Pogger Pog. That's what I got on X of Swords, guys. Let's talk about it.
All right, so X of Swords is the big crossover, originally slated for 12 issues, but because
Way
COVID
more.
changed it all, it got bumped to 24 issues.
More than that, I think it's 26.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous. It does include all the books. At the time leading into this, there was a cool promo poster that led up to this, giving everyone a sword.
Yeah, Cyclops
Cyclops
had a
should have,
lightsaber, which is why
and
I
he
was
should
like,
have,
oh.
and then perfect. And we did do a breakdown on this on the past episode, so go check that out. But it is the big part of this book was it's an Excalibur event.
Oh yeah, this directly leads from Excalibur into this. Saturnine from Otherworld and Arakko get involved together, and they're like, you know what, why are you guys here? We need this.
The
And then
story is about,
Apocalypse's wife is like, fuck you.
yeah.
Give
So
me your land. Give me
So
half
what-
the island in the divorce.
So, I know. So what happens is you get a new history of Apocalypse, introducing his 4 children, the original Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and his wife Genesis, and the original actual origin of Krakoa, in which Krakoa was one island that split into 2 after these interdimensional beings came in and they sent it into a pocket dimension. That dimension lived for thousands of years in this other little space. You see the Summoner, who is Apocalypse's grandson.
Yeah, he
who is
pops up in the
in
X-Men book from Hickman.
Yes.
They lead that into it. I think it's like issue 12.
Yeah, and now this what you find out are the Akari are invading Otherworld and taking over pieces of Otherworld, which pisses off Saturn 9. And she wants to hold a tournament. One, to get rid of Betsy because she wants
she hates
Brian, because she hates Betsy but loves Brian, and she wants Brian to be back Captain Britain, because when Betsy becomes Captain Britain, the entirety of the Captain Britain Corps now changes to look like her, and she hates that because she wants it all with Brian's. And so it's a game of her just being petty. So she sets up this tournament to stop the Akari from just invading Otherworld and all the realms in Otherworld. This explores Otherworld a lot more. You get to see Mad Jim Jaspers. You get to see a lot of characters and locations.
Fun. There's a lot of nonsense in this book once they start getting to the meat and potatoes of it. The tournament ends up becoming more of a joke as slowly but surely Krakoa seems to be losing until Wolverine or Gorgon takes out like 100 dudes or something and then evens the score because they needed to fix it. I don't know, man.
Well, also Tinny Howard and Hickman are both British because tournament.
Tinny Howard is not British. What are you talking about?
She's not British. Oh my god. Hickman is British. And
I thought Hickman was Southern. James, I don't know what you're talking about, brother.
No, he's British.
I think he's Southern, but continue.
Anyway, Jonathan Hickman, they use the idea like tournaments aren't just fighting, because we see as like, oh, it's just a fighting tournament, but there are other styles of tournament, like the British style of tournament is just games of contests.
Oh yeah, they push rocks up hills. They have an arm wrestling competition. Wolverine and Storm drink each other under the table, and then they I think they have sex, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff going on in this book. I mean, all in all, it gets a lot of bad rap, but it's really not terrible. It's pretty good overall. There's a lot of nonsense in the middle, but like the capstones, the beginning and the end, are very nice for the entirety of the Krakoan era, especially for Apocalypse being such a figurehead at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great setup. It just does get fluffy because they had extended from 12 to 20 something issues, and that is the problem. And it does rely heavily on the fact that if you read Excalibur, it's for you to read Excalibur, and that's the whole thing. Like if you didn't read Excalibur, it's kind of a loss just a little bit. But other than that, it's very okay. Right, I'm not thrilled with it
Yeah,
because it does.
Doug gets a wife in this one, but I forgot to put that as
Yes,
a note, which I feel ashamed of now. I do
'cause he's
bring
got
up
big
Doug's
lady.
Should
wife
be shame.
later. I do bring up Doug's wife later, but I should have put it up here.
Yeah, I can definitely agree on the fact that if you didn't read Excalibur, X of Swords is kind of all over the place. So when I read X of Swords, it kind of felt all over the place to me.
You're like, what's going
So,
on? Why does everybody need a sword?
yeah, I was just like, oh, okay. Like it just, it's one of those things where it definitely is not one of those standalone events, like
No,
where you could just read it in its entirety and it's all good.
It's
You
basically
definitely need some
Excalibur
background.
Volume 3. That's
Yeah,
basically what it is.
yeah. And it is one of those, like, because they extended a lot of stuff in it. And a lot of the first half of it, like the setup was them getting the swords, all matters, and then like the team like Cypher, Magic, all of them having the swords, all makes sense, and I like it a lot. It's the Apocalypse building the external gate, which is from Excalibur, using the dead bodies of the externals in order to make this gate, so they can have get to Araco and to Otherworld. It's all really cool setups, but the payoff is very nil when by the end of the event. It's just that Apocalypse leaves and like pieces out, and Araco rejoins Krakoa, and that's your end. And Doug gets his big wife. Oh, and it does introduce the concept that if you die on Otherworld, when you get
All right.
resurrected, you don't turn out the same. That's what happened
yeah,
with Rockslide. Like Rockslide
yeah,
dies.
Oh yeah, Rockslide
yeah.
gets goofed
Rockslide
on, and
slide,
then
yeah.
you eventually they fix him later on, but it's like issue 700. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do a lot of work to try and figure him out.
yeah,
He
they'll
comes
bring
back as
Texas
wrong
back or
slide.
whatever.
Because when you get resurrected, you're every version of yourself in one body, which I thought would be a cool concept if they didn't pick a weird character to do that with.
Yeah, Rockslide. I think it's because they just needed a character that didn't matter, so they were like, he was big in the Colors era or something, so let's keep him around. And
Well,
then they just like, nah.
they killed Gorgon in this too, and they resurrect him, and he just seems to be fine.
Yeah, well, the
It's
reason why,
Gorgon.
like, it's because Santos's body and his shell are like different, and because he died in one place and they resurrected him, only like his body could have got resurrected instead of his soul, so it was just the rocks. It was
That's weird,
interesting concept, but I think poorly executed because nobody talks about it.
and no one
And this
important
is
died.
and this is why I kind of
Well,
say, like,
Captain Britain turns into glass for a while, so that's crazy. She dies in
that
the
was the
first fight.
thing.
She loses immediately to like one hit, and I'm like, all right. But I think it's because she goes up against my mutant powers. I literally can't lose, and I'm like, okay, good
Insica,
for
yeah.
you guys. I'm glad you
It's
guys
gonna
lost
be
eventually.
unbeatable
I
or
love that.
undefeated.
Yeah,
It-
the
it-
unbeatable, the
it's,
unbeatable.
it's the one right
Oh,
here.
unbeatable.
This one, she's unbeatable.
Yeah, no, that's
That's
Famine.
not her.
No,
Is
Also,
it this one, or is it Doug's wife?
no, that is War. That's Genesis.
Okay, I don't know.
She's not on the picture.
One of them can't die, and or can't be beaten, and that's why Betsy gets turned into shattered glass or something.
Yeah, well, it's a magic thing, and it's a
Yeah.
whole thing that leads to the end of Excalibur. But
told
yeah,
you,
it's
this is magic becomes janky.
yeah,
Even jankier than it normally is.
yeah.
This is basically the end of the Krakoan era for the dawn of X. The first half, there is extra bits of expanded reading, which are basically just one shots that tie into Krakoa or mention Krakoa heavily. Gwenpool strikes back. She becomes a mutant. Weapon Plus talks about the mutants. Orcus is brought up in the Brute Force special, and then World War II Weapon Plus, whatever, Man Thing, Slaughter. He comes back later. Black Cat 9 and 10. Wolverine shows up, and they talk about Krakoa. Deadpool issue 6. He tries to infiltrate Krakoa during the Kelly Thompson Deadpool King of the Monsters Island run. Runaways 34 and 35 talk about Molly being a mutant and going to Krakoa. Fantastic Four 26 retcons Franklin Richards, and then Marvel Comics 1000 and Incoming each have 1 to 2 page stories that tie to Krakoa from Hickman. So that's just some extra food for thought as we get into the closing of the era, where some of the stuff was tied into the overall universe, but not that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I got all on that. Next up is the Reign of X. Bum, bum, bum. Second phase of the Krakoan era, which culminated in the limited series Inferno. Tickman's final phase, which is 2 out of 4, which is crazy. Hellfire Gala is in here somewhere, and Give Me My Wife from Mystique. Let's get more into it. Hellions, hell yeah. The first one to spin out of X of Swords coming out. Wells and Scovia finished their run with issue 18, and the team will be scattered around afterwards, except for Empath. I think he just kind of fucks off. Continues to slap. I wonder where Zeb Wells goes from here.
Wow.
Oh, well, read Hellions. Anyway, James, let's talk about Hellions for longer than we need to.
I know. Exactly. It's the best part of the book. This kind of cleans up everything. It sets up Dark Web. It's the return of Madeline. The team is falling apart. They are sent by Sinister to go.
Oh yeah, they go on a suicide mission, and then Sinister comes back. Oh my god, all my Hellions are dead. It's so good.
Right.
He's a very good actor.
Yes. Well, it's all part of. Yes. So after their mission in Otherworld, where their job was to go and get the sword from to stop the tournament from happening, they fail miserably, and they end up having to come back to Krakoa after the tournament's over. And in turn, Sinister, they are sent to go after Arcade, who you find out is being brainwashed and controlled by Sinister to create a cloning lab, so he can go back to being the cloning geneticist that he is.
Yeah, Sinister can never give up his old ways because Sinister Loki sucks, but
yes,
we love him.
Also, in this story arc, you also see them go to the Nebraska school, in which you meet all the dead Hellions, the original actual Hellions teammates.
Yeah, they pop up in the Hellfire Gala briefly as well.
Yep. Well, the ones that are dead because they're like zombie souls that are now brought to Krakoa to be resurrected. And Madeline Pryor is there, the Goblin Queen. And this team has to deal with all their greatest nightmares, which is Psylocke. It's Betsy versus Quanon. It is Alex and Madeline. It is Nanny getting overpowered by Orphan Maker. Empath being tortured by his former teammates. And Grey Crow being hunted down by the Morlocks for all his crimes against them. It's a really sad back end, but it's a great story because you still see Sinister's kind of machinations in play that go on forever from here.
Yeah, and they lead into something fun, which we'll get to during Destiny of X. Justin, what did you think about Hellions? Did you read this one?
I feel like I didn't.
I feel like you'd know if you read it. It's crazy.
I know. I was kind of just like, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, did I read that? I don't think I did.
It's only 18 issues, I think maybe plus one extra story somewhere. It's collected in omnibus. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out because I did read the first part of Hellions and I thought it was really good. And, honestly, as a team, especially one that consists of so many broken characters, whenever they kind of have to deal with a lot of their issues, it always makes for a fascinating read. So to see that, like, hey, they have to go and basically face off against their worst nightmares, it's kind of interesting. I definitely want to go back and read that.
All right, let's get to the next bit. X Factor. This finishes up Leah Williams' run on the 10 issues. Williams and Baldeon continue with more of the same. Suits are too cool. Leads into Hellfire Gala and the Trial of Magneto. Dakin is still here being a hot boy. There he is. So, yeah, let's finish up the Hellion stuff, the X Factor stuff, James. I know you got some choice words to say about the latter half of this story. Unless he's dead.
He might be.
Shutting off my cam. Oh, because you're getting naked. Ooh. Ooh. All right, Justin, you talk about it till James gets back.
So, I mean, X Factor has always been pretty interesting, especially like the whole premise. But I feel like here's my problem. When you take somebody, especially like Rachel Gray, who constantly likes to shove into your face that she's like this kind of chronokinetic and she can do all these things, and then she's like, but I'm kind of limited when it comes to needing somebody else's, like when they wanted to make Guy a little bit more important. So I was kind of just like, some of the individualistic stuff, such as that, kind of really rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, because I feel like putting Rachel on a team kind of just like, unless Dakin's there to be amazing.
To be a hot boy.
To be a hot boy.
I go to move my camera and then like I missed a whole like slide.
You missed the hot boy stuff, man. There he is again. One more time.
So we were just talking about our take on X Factor 5 through 10.
Yeah, James, I know you got words.
Yeah.
I know. I hate X Factor 5 through 10. Uh,
Wow. Okay.
um, I think it's like a lost kind of thing. It could have been. This is a siren. This is the siren story, right?
I believe
For
so. Yeah, they're trying to
yeah,
bring Siren back, or Siren's got something going on. There's like an
yeah,
evil
it's her in the
clone of her, something
Morrigan.
like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's her in the Morrigan. Yeah, it's. Oh, I hate it so much. They could have done. They should have done a storyline in which they found a body, resurrected someone, and it turned out that it wasn't the case, and then make it more of an investigative story.
Yeah, they
The
tried
problem,
each of those concepts 2 times, one in each volume, and they just never, I guess, committed fully to it. I don't know what Leah was
no,
doing, not in a bad way. I just don't know what she was doing leading up to her stellar Trial of Magneto, which we'll get
yeah,
to.
Yeah.
Trial of
that's all.
Magneto was way too good.
I know. And that's the whole thing. Like, I don't understand how she dropped the ball here for no particular reason. Because I don't get like that. The story is like just handed to you. Just do this story, and she doesn't do that. She goes, well, and it's fine. I guess you want to give them a different kind of mission and idea to go out
Yeah, this
and
is
go
the new era.
investigate.
This is the reign of X. This is a whole new
Right,
status quo for the entire line. You got to
but
do
it's not
something
even.
different.
But even it's not even that different. They're still living. This all they're doing is living post Extra Swords, in which they now have the Akari living on on the island, and that should have been like the X Factor going, "Hey, there's a murder on Araco on the Araco side of the island. Go over there and figure out." Or when the Akari killed a mutant on Krakoa, go solve the case so you can find out who we have to go after, and they don't do that here. It's more. It feels like it's an out of place story that just would fit in a normal Marvel X-Men book. That wouldn't be a Krakoa Age book. Like, oh, they're just gonna fight and go help Siren, and she's possessed by evil goddess, Celtic goddess magic. I'm like, sure,
Yeah. I can definitely agree that like they kind of shit the bed towards the end. like, the problem with X Factor is when you kind of go outside of just the main sleuthing detective work and you kind of make this overarching story or overarching event that you want them to be a part of, it loses the spirit of the book, in my opinion.
yeah,
Like, the whole point of the team is to investigate missing persons and make the determination as to whether or not it's okay to resurrect someone. And I think you don't need it to be like a massive, or you don't need to have them do like a massive story or anything like that. You can just have them do interesting work with like twists and turns that like lead them into different places. Like I feel like they tried to do that, but it was just poorly executed in the end.
yeah. So
All right, let's get on to the next bit. Sword. This is by Ewing and Valeri Sheedy with Caselli coming back. Magneto and Abigail Brand do space stuff. Too many crossovers. This one had Annihilation, um, King in Black, and Hellfire Gala all within 10 issues.
yep,
So this one, unfortunately, even though, and I think a little bit of Empire, but only like a
yeah.
little bit because they had Hulkling in the last
Well,
bit
it
or
spins
last
out of
Annihilation. Yeah.
no. Well, it spins out of actually. This book spins out of Empire.
Okay. I should put
It's the
that one down.
yes, it's the final vision where you see all the characters and like, oh well, who are they fighting against? Because it's supposed to be like, oh, what happens if the final scene in Empire is a flash forward and it's like Teddy on the ground, he's about to die. It's like, oh well, what happens if you don't have reinforcements and it's Sword showing up to kill him?
Mhm.
But you don't know it's Sword at the time. And then Sword is here. Sword actually makes sense. This is where you get the idea of the Mysterium, which is this mystery element that only can be mined in the fabrics of space and time, which is a
Sure, like
white hot.
Transformium,
Yeah,
is
like
what it
it's
is.
no, it's supposed to be from the white hot room. It's Al Ewing's take on the Krakoa era because it does feel like it's
Yeah,
Al
this is Al
Ewing's
Ewing's first book of the Krakoan era, and he goes balls to the wall with the
right.
concept cables here. So
And it is like it's the bigger heady stuff that Al Ewing was already doing in Ultimates. He pulls a lot of it. A lot of stuff he does here, he pulls from Ultimates. The team's okay. Like you have the kiss ass Fabian Cortez, which is funny. Who tries to still kiss Magneto's ass in this book because you forget like Magneto goes, yeah, I don't remember you, and like Fabian's like
he's
all
like,
over.
"Come on." I
Yeah.
think he's a
Uh,
Hellion, right?
no, Fabian Cortez was an acolyte.
Acolyte. Okay.
His power is to. They have their own version of the five, which allow them to teleport and do other space
Yeah,
nonsense.
Manifold is here as well as Whiz Kid and that dude
Whiz
with a bunch of arms that makes the costumes.
Oh
Jumbo.
yeah, Jumbo Carnation,
Yeah, yeah.
Magneto, Abigail Brand, Kid Cable, Fabian Cortez, Frenzy,
Frenzy,
Manifold.
that is. I was like, who
Uh,
is this?
yeah, and they all play different roles. They all play different roles.
This is like the Star Trek of the Krakoan era. They all kind of have their like seat at the front of the starship as they all do stuff in space.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like this, like, hey, we're going into space. This is where our next step is for the X-Men, which we later on find out why. But they also are like Doom's in it. So the crossovers that
Well,
they
Doom
are,
is in the Last Annihilation stuff, which was like a big kind of Silver Surfer, Annihilus, Guardians kind of thing.
yeah,
But Doom was involved, and obviously Sword gets involved for an issue or two. It's not
yeah,
a bad book. Last Annihilation is pretty cool.
yeah.
But like,
Well,
it's
the
just
whole
weird that Sword had just so many crossovers, and like
w-
King in Black is there. At one point, they just fight a big Venom dragon on the moon or
yeah.
something, and they're
Well,
like, "All right,
because
bye."
I think it makes sense for this book to be the crossover book when you're doing space stuff because without the Starjammers, there is no X-Men space book.
Oh yeah,
You
I mean they
know,
sent the New Mutants into space, but then after X of Swords, which I think we'll get to soon, New Mutant starts up by Vita. I think it's the next slide, honestly, and that is where they're kind of just like, "All right, we're back."
right? And so that's the whole thing. So that like having them have a presence in space, especially that we know what's coming up soon, it makes a lot of sense. And it is cool to see this team. And of course, there's a traitor amongst the mix. That
They did.
someone's working for Orcus. More than one person is actually working for Orcus, which is crazy. Manifold gets a big story in
Oh, yeah, he's
this.
got a lot of stuff to do in this book, which is
Yeah.
cool. Manifold is one of those guys that nobody really cares about, but he's got like really good powers, so it's cool that he gets some shine here.
Ridiculously good power, is not
He's
gonna
a,
lie.
yeah, the quantum teleporter. Like
Yeah,
it's
and
amazing.
then they're just like, "Let's put him on a spaceship." It's like, what? All right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, along the lines of what Sword was actually developed to do, it makes perfect sense that, you had this book in particular kind of tie into a lot of the spacefaring stuff because like you said, James, with like the Starjammers being the real representation of like the X-Men in outer space, the next frontier for them, once they sort of established the mutant nation of Genosha, space was naturally like a next odyssey for them,
Right.
considering how many ties that they have with the Shi'ar Empire and all of that. Like, at some given point, you knew that like eventually they were going to have some kind of representation in space, and using Abigail Brandon's sword was kind of a clever nod where this series kind of prepared you for that.
It's phenomenally written. I think Ewing does his best, like heady concepts and takes them into like, all right, we'll go throw space into this, and it works very well. I think yes, are the crossovers a problem? It's not a problem. I think it makes sense because all the stuff that they were doing crossovers with were all space
This was
stories.
kind of like their world book at the
Yeah,
same time. Like, sure, the street level X-Men crossed over in Dark Web and in Devil's Reign and
yeah,
Axe, but a lot of the big stuff when you're outside of just like New York City, basically, yeah,
yeah.
Guardians and Venom and all that. So yeah, it makes sense. It's just it sucks that it was a 10-issue series and like 2.5 of them are crossovers because one of them's a Hellfire Gala.
Exactly. No, I get it. Because especially if you weren't reading it, it's like, all right, do I pick this book up? Well, it's X Men in space, but like, it's none of the X Men that you really know, and
Yeah,
that's kind of
it's
the
nobody
thing,
we care about except for Magneto and Kid Cable, kinda. You know what I mean?
right?
Like Kid Cable's like people like him, but it's not Cable.
No,
Yeah,
no,
and I mean, Magneto was basically like your pull to this book. If
Oh
you
yeah.
yeah. If
really
you're
like
following the
Magneto,
Quiet Council stuff,
yeah.
you're going into this one, yeah. Next up is Marauders 16 to 27. Duggan, Castelli, and Lally bring Kitty into her Slay Cunt era. Kill Shaw ties closer to Hellfire Gala than most of the others. And that's all I have on the one for
Yeah.
notes.
Well, and that's what it is. It is the kitty with the kill Shore tattoo. It's them finding out that Shore kills Kitty in this part of the series, and it's his coup to take over the Hellfire Club.
Rip his
He
ass.
resurrects his son Shinobi, and institutes him as it's the red chair and the third chair is open at this point of Krakoa. For the I forgot what side Emma and Shaw are on. I think the Autumn chair.
Well, no, I
It,
think Kitty. Oh yeah, because Kitty leaves the
she's not.
throne, right?
Well, no, she's not yet. She hasn't been
No, yeah.
given it yet.
Okay.
Because that's
I
why
thought
she
it goes
kills
to
Shore
Bishop.
now. No, so he's the Red Bishop. Because
Mm,
Callisto's the White Knight.
okay.
Um,
Too many chess things
they're
going
all
on.
chess pieces, yeah. But what happens is with Kitty dead, Shore resurrects Shinobi and wants to put him in the red seat. And then they find and resurrect Kitty, and they make her the Red Queen. This is when she
And
starts
give
taking
her
the
her
code
curly
name.
ass hair.
Yes, that's why she gets the name, the Red Queen now, and then she gets her own team with Bishop as the Red
Yeah, and
Bishop.
Bishop goes through like a nice costume change and looks pretty
Yes,
cool going forward, except that he has the hair that they keep giving everybody.
yeah, I know, but they give him the red suit because it's supposed to be part of the Hellfire Club. So
Mhm.
you dress in the color you're
Yeah, you got to be
assigned
in the
to.
uniform. It's very cool.
Right, like Christian and Callisto wear white because they're the part of Emma's side. Bishop wears red because he's part of Kitty's, and Shinobi wears black because he's part of Sebastian.
Mhm.
Sebastian is like put in a vegetative state, and it's like the entire arc is just
Well,
the
yeah, because like
coup.
Kitty and Emma are like, if we kill him, he's just gonna tell everybody what we're doing because they do some sus business for a minute, and then so they're like, you know what? Let's just vegetize some Shaw and have him just a silent partner on the Quiet Council.
Because he then wouldn't interfere with what Emma's doing.
Exactly.
Exactly. And you know what? Not gonna lie, once again, were you ever surprised that you were going to be portrayed by Sebastian Shaw?
Yeah,
Like
Dude's
the
the king of
moment,
shit eating grins.
yeah, like the moment he was on like the Quiet Council and a part of this whole thing, I was like, he's gonna do a power grab at some given point. But what I do like is that they kind of set up this whole idea, and this is why I can kind of forgive the whole thing with Kitty not being able to use the gates because it does give you this kind of idea that like, can Kitty be resurrected? Like if she's
right.
dead, we don't know if the resurrection protocols are going to work on her because none of the Krakoan technology seems to be able to work with her.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of like a fascinating sort of like, maybe we can't bring back Kitty and what are we going to do? And
Yeah, well,
then
that's why Shaw did his power play. He's like, oh yeah, she's not really doing a lot of this Krakoa stuff. You know what? Let's see what happens. Let's fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
so I thought that made it kind of like a fascinating kind of like lore thing. And then, obviously Sebastian Shaw being Sebastian Shaw and entering his find out era.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also start dealing in Mysterium on Earth.
Yeah,
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 That's how
because
yeah.
why
this book.
not, right?
Well, because they got from Sword. Mhm.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to New Mutants 14 to 24. This is the Ayala run. Vita Ayala officially jumps on board after X of Swords and runs New Mutants until the final issue with various artists, but mostly Rod Reyes. Classic vibes. It just feels like an old school New Mutants book. They bring Warlock, Warpath, and I called her Honey Badger. Is it just Badger? I don't really know what
Nope,
her
it's Honey
code name
Badger.
is.
Nope, it's
It
Honey
is Honey
Badger.
Badger. Okay, they bring them onto the main force because half the team is doing other stuff.
So
I don't really know. I didn't read this book, unfortunately. I like
Oh,
Ayala, but I don't care about the New Mutants. So
this book is great. Like they do a great job of setting up everything from the New Mutants. The reason why Honey Badgers is on the book is because there is something going on with the children of Krakoa being influenced by someone. It's supposed to be Shadow King, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and
always the Shadow King.
they're dying and stuff like that. So that's why she's on the team as part of like, oh hey, it's a resurrection to make sure like, hey, to go investigate this. And she's the linchpin to go investigate this whole story. And the Shadow King being a big villain uh for that era of X-Men and where they're from makes sense. But yeah, it's a solid New Mutant story. It's an actually classic New Mutant story. And it's the first real revamp of the team since the start, where this is actually just a New Mutants book where it's not two different people, it's just them. It's really
yeah,
good.
I think there is one more Ayala volume somewhere in here before it leads into Lethal Legion. But we'll get there when we get there. Justin, what are you thinking about this New Mutants? All a bunch of Sienkiewicz covers, so you got to be into it, right?
I loved this New Mutants. Like, this is probably one of the books that I would give like a 4.5 out of 5 because I honestly, Warpath is one of my favorite characters. I always found him to be such an interesting character, and especially during his X Force arc, I thought that was like top notch Warpath storytelling. So, bringing him into the book
Oh, the
just
Remember
made
stuff,
me,
yeah.
yeah, like bringing him on like just made it all the better for me. And like you guys were saying, it was just a classic sort of New Mutants story, which made me honestly love to follow along with it. Like it was just really good.
Like I said, like it is the one major thing that Ayala does is retcon the Shadow King by showing that the Shadow King is a force, not very much what Claremont kind
Not
of
just
wanted it to
some
be.
dude that looks like Kingpin with a fez.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. So Claremont always wanted the Shadow King to be the anti-Phoenix. Um, that's why if you like look at the drawings during that era, when Shadow King's actually fighting, he has the Phoenix symbol on him.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Very cool.
Like in his astral form. So he was supposed to be the anti-Phoenix. So Vita retcons that Amal Farouk is just a host for this current incarnation of the Shadow King, and this entire story is his like call for help to be saved from the Shadow King. And I love that because it's like a start to finish story about the Shadow King, you know, wrapped up in like this whole thing with all these kids that are just on Krakoa. Like it's like almost Stephen King vibes with this.
And it kind of made more sense because, like, initially they like developed Farouk as being this like anti Xavier. Like, he is basically just as powerful as Charles Xavier, except he's like really, really bad, which, I mean, honestly, that's like must be dregs of the earth because Xavier's not exactly a good person in himself
No,
anyway.
Xavier
So
hasn't been good since like the Stan Lee X-Men,
Xavier
basically.
hasn't been good since like I
ever.
can't even say from the womb because like
Kill the sister.
he killed his sister.
Yeah, Xavier's a little motherfucker.
But like it made more sense to have like the Shadow King in and of itself be this like actual cosmic force because like no matter who the Shadow King possesses, whether it be like Karma or Farouk or anybody else, he seems to bestow this like incredible amount of power to that individual. And much like in parallel to the Phoenix Force, whenever the Phoenix Force embodies a host, they get bestowed with an incredible amount of power. Same thing with like, like Silver Surfer with the power cosmic. Usually it's some kind of cosmic force or cosmic being that like is responsible for this. It's not
Right.
just one person who suddenly just randomly becomes the Shadow King.
Yeah.
So I thought that I agree with you, James. I thought that was a really, really nice touch to actually give uh a Shadow King even more of a terrifying presence to the X universe.
Yeah. And it
Yeah, there's
comes
also a lot
back
of
later
trippy
on.
artwork. Some of these characters that they come up with in here, one of the characters eventually joins them. It's the one with the weird ass head, the one right
Yes.
back here. This character becomes like a big part of the storyline, and it's a lot of good stuff. And Rod Reyes is a really good artist when it comes down to doing like weird stuff. He did both these covers right here, or at least this one. And I think this is just Sienkiewicz.
No,
But
that's yeah, because
yeah.
it's supposed to mirror the original
Yeah, well, this is
Sienkiewicz,
the
like
Hellfire Gala bits right here.
yeah,
That's why they're wearing spiky stuff. But let's get on to the next little bit. We got X Force 15 to 26, volumes 3 and 4. We get into the meat and potatoes of this. Ben Percy keeps going, his Mutant Black Ops team, but this time we got Robert Gill on the book because Kubert was busy doing other stuff. I think Colossus joins the Quiet Council, so he's bouncing around, but you guys can correct me. Manslaughter appearance. Hell yeah, go read Weapon Plus. And that's it on that one. He's over here. There he is.
yes. So
Yeah, Forge also joins the team as a permanent member during this arc as well.
yes, because he was like on and off from back then. He was like their arms manufacturer, and then now he
Yeah.
just becomes part of the team. Gene's off the book at the time. The team has taken more of a standalone. Like they are more of a Black Ops squad in this version of
Yeah, they do a
Percy's
more
run
combat approach instead of CIA.
instead of being the
Yeah.
CIA. also in this one, Colossus has not joined the team yet. Let me just double check. I do.
Well, it covers 15 to 26. That's why I was saying, like, I forget exactly when Colossus joins the Quiet Council.
double
It's
checking.
around Inferno, so if it runs to the back end of it, it should be around the last 3 issues.
Yeah, because it's not during. It's not before Hellfire Gala.
Yeah, no,
26.
it's right before Inferno, I believe, because Hellfire Gala is like the direct middle of the longer titles. It's like right there, you know.
Yeah. No, he doesn't join the team yet. He doesn't join there yet. No,
He
it's not
gets
yet.
there.
It's later on. It is later on. I was just double checking because I have like mini notes.
Yeah,
for certain
Justin, did you get
things.
a chance to read the X-Force stuff, or was this one of the ones that you didn't get a full read on?
Didn't get a full read on. Definitely after X of Swords, there were a couple that I didn't fully read through.
You lost hope. It's fair.
I did.
You were like, ooh,
Some
too many
things-
crossovers. Yikes.
Some things get pretty wild pretty quickly. But honestly, the fact that it kind of swings back into a more traditional X Force, it sounds like, where it's definitely more just like Black Ops, like presumably we have targets, we need to eliminate targets kind of situation. Is kind of interesting considering that it initially had the CIA vibe that I think everybody was really digging for X Force for a while. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
kind of
more of an
interesting.
action boy. I like the crazy X-Force nonsense, but the CIA era was pretty cool, all things considered, especially with Beast. But Beast slowly just starts to go crazier and crazier as we get into this nonsense. He starts fitting a lot of the gear with Forge with a lot of the like Krakoan base, and it kind of fucks with him.
It does. And oh yeah, this is also when you're right. No, this is when he joins the Quiet
Yeah,
Council
it should be the
shortly.
end of it. Yeah.
It's toward the end of the run because it's I forgot Hellfire Gala is during this era too.
Yeah.
Hellfire Gala is just them doing security during the Hellfire Gala. There is a cool there's a spotlight and Quentin Choir because something major is about to happen to his character coming up after this run, after this arc for him. Also this is where they first bring back Omega Red to the team, but he's not on the team yet. This is where they
Yeah.
start judging whether they should mind wipe him or make him kind of like a meat puppet to kind of work for them.
Yeah, because he is
And
powerful and useful. So it's like,
yes,
well,
and this
devil
is
you
the
know, right?
yeah, and then this is the era where you get to see oh my goodness, off the top of my head, Hellfire Gala, that Colossus is the traitor. This
Yeah.
is he hasn't joined the Quiet Castle yet. He is the traitor. It's revealed that he's the traitor.
Yeah, that's why he's being sus
Yeah,
throughout the big. Yeah, volumes 4 and 5 have Colossus wearing like a sovereign looking uniform. Excalibur 16 to 26. We got Howard and 2 throw Betsy and company into more mystic shenanigans involving Betsy's sister-in-law and motherfucking Doctor Doom. Rogue is with the X-Men in volume 4, which means Lonely Gambit time. This one's for the boys. All right. So yeah, let's give
Gambit
us
slays.
the back half of the Excalibur run. These are, I believe, the final issues of Excalibur that lead into whatever books come next, which we'll talk about. But I haven't gotten a chance to read volume 4 yet. When Rogue left, I was like, oh, well, all right.
You're like I'm out, and like
It's like,
I mean, I'll get there. I like Betsy.
I can't with you.
But
But anyway,
Justin, what do we got from you guys? Did you guys read Excalibur volume 3 and 4?
Yes,
well, I know
I
you read
love,
them all.
yeah,
James,
I
but-
love
James
Excalibur.
definitely read them. I told you I was kind of just like off put before X of Swords, so like
fair enough.
I love Excalibur. The big thing about this run of Excalibur, specifically where we are on 16 to 26. Yeah, that's the last couple of issues.
Mhm.
It's rushed. It's very rushed. A lot of it is what happened to Betsy. Let's go find. The entire thing is we're going to find Betsy after X of Swords and what happened to her.
Yeah,
and
volume
go
3
forward.
is like we got to resurrect Betsy, and then volume 4 is right after Hellfire Gala, where the new X-Men team has been made, and then they just kind of got to wrap things up for Excalibur as a
super
whole.
rushed.
And Doctor Doom just keeps popping up.
I mean, yeah, but
Doctor Doom's
it's
in like every volume 2 of all these books.
yeah, it's
Sword,
very rushed.
Excalibur. There's another one somewhere in here.
I know it's very rushed. This is where they get the versions of Captain Britain, where it's the Captain Britain Corps is like all Betsy's. This is where you get to see them finally as all Betsy's. But right before this, you had them all as uh Richter. One was one was Gambit, one was Rogue, one was Jubilee, and one was someone else. Like the 4 alternate Captain Britons appeared, which I think was issue 18.
Yeah, they touch upon that at the beginning where they're like, everybody can be bestowed Britain powers, and then they take it away because they're like weird, and they drop it in later. Yeah.
So they weren't really like they weren't supposed to be like they were also they're alternate reality versions of
Yeah.
them that they're alive for a little bit too long. And they figure out that she's living in an alternate Britain type of thing, which is also dumb. It's a very rushed ending, which sucks because this book was really, really good. But it was like, let's wrap everything up because Inferno is coming. Not Inferno is coming. Hellfire Galler had just ended and we're going towards the end of everything else. It just so rushed, and I feel bad because it's like you lose a lot of what the story is. You just lose it. You just lose it. Like it doesn't matter. Like and at some point, Brian became Captain Avalon during Extra Swords.
Yeah, so he does that for a little bit longer because he's tied to Saturnine because he's trying to get Betsy back. Or it's
no, he takes the sword Excalibur and makes it and becomes the warrior for Avalon, which is
he's evil
his
for
part.
a minute too, right?
No, he's the Dark Knight, and that's later on.
Yeah.
He's the Black Knight.
Let's get it for the boys. All right, Wolverine 8 through 19. This is where Maverick comes in. Percy and Hubert keep the titular Bub Man doing what he does best. Maverick is back. Remember him? I really don't, but he's cool. Logan fights Iraqi pirates and a guy named Jeff Bub.
Yep, that's pretty much it. It's just more Wolverine stuff.
Kind of what happened.
Set up all in a nutshell.
Like, it's one of those like I'm not gonna like sit and like I didn't really read a lot of Wolverine.
I'm like the only guy who read Wolverine, and I've only read like half of it because there's a lot.
Well, the whole thing is like so with this part of the run.
It just feels like classic Wolverine now.
It's just classic Wolverine. So this is 8 through 19. So it's just it's the fallout. It's him dealing with the sword guy from Extra Swords,
yeah,
the guy that's made out of
nemesis or something.
Yeah.
Solemn, something like that.
Solemn, yeah.
He's made out of adamantium, so he can't kill him, but Maverick can or something. I don't know.
And then just more like regular Wolverine stuff that happens and besides the Hellfire Gala issue, where he fights against Deadpool, but like
well, because Deadpool again tries to invade the Krakoa because he's not invited because he's not really a mutant, but he is or whatever. So they do that.
No,
That's a fun one. Next up, we got X-Men 16 to 29. This finishes up Hickman's run. Hickman and you say goodbye to the Summers family and head off to Hellfire Gala and Inferno.
Inferno's way later.
Status quo. It's just because it's all part of this era. I just mention it all the time.
Okay.
Nimrod comes online early, which is a problem. Vault opens and only Synapse is alive. I think that's his name, right?
No, you mean Sync.
Fuck. His name is Sync. Synapse is some weird. Yes. I think Synapse is Avenger. But anyway, Sync. I'll change it in post, or I won't. But yeah, it's when I wrote down Synapse, I was like, that's not his name, but whatever.
That's close enough.
Sync comes out. So yeah, this is just the rest of the Hickman stuff. What do you guys think for the last few issues of Hickman?
It's good. It was a great wrap up for what he had. It's him going to space. It's him bringing back the Brood and putting Brew in charge of the Brood entirety as a new Hive King.
Come back later on as a problem, so it is cool. We'll get to that though.
Yep. Again, this is more of him planting Easter eggs for stuff to come out later on. It's the Vulcan before X-Men Red thing happens. It's kind of cleaning up the stuff that he left over from New Mutants. It's a very clean ending because it does technically end right with Hellfire Gala. It's a great send-off for the X-Men to kind of clean up the Summers family. The X-Men is no longer be about Scott and his family. It's about to be a superhero, Marvel superhero universe book.
Captain Krakoa.
Yeah. And I like it. I like it a lot. I think it's a great send-off to Hickman's piece.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I really enjoyed X-Men at this point because, I enjoyed kind of the whole Summers family dynamic, and I really like the fact that they just wrapped it all up very nicely. It was something that it wasn't rushed. It kind of took its time out, and then it kind of sets you up for a new X team, which I think is great because honestly, one of the things that I actually particularly liked about the sort of Krakoan age when it comes to the X Men teams is that I think it should be a changing roster. I don't think that it should just be a perpetual like these six people are going to be the constant X-Men team that ward off all mutant like related issues.
No, no,
So
no.
I particularly like the fact that they had a solid X-Men run, and then they're leading into a new team kind of taking over and taking up the
And it's
mantle.
cool that that a different writer and artist also take over for the book as well. It's a nice passing of the torch this final little bit.
Exactly.
Well, also like it was meant to be the sign off. And yes, but like it is meant to be like, all right, we need to make it actual superhero team, and it works because it is the end of his Krakoa era. It's not his, but like the end of what we've been seeing for the most part. And yes, it is the Nimrod. The end piece is the Nimrod story, and um it has been most of this book has been set ups for future storylines, and we're finally like cleaning it out and going forward. I think because the final issue is a Hellfire as the Hellfire tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Let's get to that next bit. Cable 7 through 12. Doug and Anoto have Cable team up with Domino and then close out the chapter, sending Cable to Sword with Ewing. I know this is out of order, but that's what happens. Cable's looking for babies. That's what he's doing in this one. He's finishing up the Inferno kids in this one.
yes, and that's it. All it is, it's
Yeah.
giving him a place to kind of do stuff. You
And
find
then
out
Cable Reloaded is also collected in this, I believe, which is why Old Man Cable and Strife are in the back. But I'm not positive where it's collected if it's not collected here.
But
So
yes,
don't quote me on that.
you also have Strife show up, and the running theory for a lot of fans became if Cable, this version of Kid Cable, is actually Strife and not actually Nathan. Didn't matter because we found out that wasn't true.
But it would have been cool.
It would have been a very cool twist, not gonna lie.
Yes,
We could have had a Cable v Cable book. That would have been fun.
yeah, but yeah, it's more Cable doing spy stuff. There's nothing crazy. It wraps up. It ends. It wraps up his relationship with the Cuckoo.
Yeah, because they got to send him back to. Well, they send him to space and then they send him out.
Right.
Back to
Yes.
time travel or whatever.
No,
in the future.
No, he stays in the current time. Even
Does
at
he?
the end of. Yep, he never leaves.
Oh, I don't remember, man.
Nope. I'm
I
talking
know
about
old
even
Cable
now.
comes back.
Yeah, and Cable, they're both here. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, oh hey, it's just a Cable story. It's just finishing up the baby, the Inferno baby.
Inferno babies.
Inferno
Oh,
baby.
Justin, did you read this?
I did actually.
What do you think?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was, it was just basically a continuation of the Cable story. So I mean,
It's collected as Cable by Duggan and Noto. It's issues 1 through 5 and then 7 through 12, or whatever ones aren't the Hellfire and X of Swords are collected here.
yeah,
In the omnibus that they released later on. So yeah, it's good stuff all around. I'm glad that everybody seemed to enjoy Cable.
Yeah, Cable's good. Especially when you see him in a different kind of light.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this book ends early because Duggan's about to move on to a different book.
Oh yeah, Duggan gets on. Oh, Children of the Atom. Let's do a quick little chat about this. Ayala teams with Bernard Chang and Paco Medina. What if the X-Men had sidekicks? Redheaded stepchild of the Krakoan era. It's pretty good, but had bad scheduling. Oh, and Gimmick will return. I think her name's not Gimmick though. I forgot to change it.
Yeah, they change it later on.
It's Faint.
Yeah,
yes.
Faint later on.
Yeah.
It's a book that suffered from COVID.
This is the biggest, yeah. But it had such a cool idea. The marketing was a little misguided, but the idea and the book as a whole was very cool. But because of the delays due to COVID, they had to do issue 6 is like a direct tie-in to Hellfire Gala, and also like ends the book, and only Gimmick / Faint is like a actual mutant, so everyone else just kind of disappears forever. It's interesting.
So the big thing about this book is that it's not just like, oh, what if the X-Men had sidekicks? But these are
that was the pitch.
Yeah, I know. But like they are people, they're humans that are pretending to be mutants because they idolize the X-Men in a world that now sees them as a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when these fans get their hands on technology in order to do that? And it's a really cool take. There is a big mystery on like whether these kids are mutants or not until it's revealed that Gimmick is actually the only mutant, and her girlfriend's the Cyclops Cyclops Lass, I think that's what they call him, which is a stupid
I
name.
don't remember.
It's a really cool story. It's a very fun story and it's very poignant if it
Yeah,
was
that's why I
released
said
on
it's the
time.
redheaded stepchild. It's just
Yeah,
weird. It's good, but it's like, why is this here? What is this? Who is this for? But it's good. So
because if it was released on time and it was a little bit longer, it would have actually made a little bit more sense in the background by giving it more than one arc. Because giving
yeah,
it
well, it
the
was
one
collected
arc,
as volume 1, and then they were like, just kidding.
it's the entire series.
Yeah.
Um, but it should have been if this was actually longer. Like you would see,
I
like
think
all right,
12 would have been phenomenal for this.
because
Find
if
out
you
who's the mutant in the first 6, and then explore what that means for them as a whole for the
right,
rest of the
whether or not
6.
they're going to be a team still, do they?
Mhm.
It would be cool if they got they changed their names and became like their own characters.
Yeah, the
That
new Warriors, cough, cough.
right,
But
you know what I
instead,
mean?
we needed B negative in Safe Space and Snowflake.
Yeah, that went nowhere. Thank
Well,
God that book never got made.
it
Except for
might
B
not.
negative, who was in ASM Bloodhunt
Oh, dude, fuck yeah.
or Mormon Time.
Yeah. Justin, did you read this one?
I definitely did, and I had mixed feelings about it. Because initially it gave me like, what if you had like young human basically,
Mhm.
and I was kind of just like, oh, okay, you have these like kids that like idolize, mutants and want to be like mutants and da 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 da. And to me, I think it honestly would have been better if it explored the ramifications of like, um, actually like actually portraying sort of being a mutant when you're not being a mutant a little bit more heavily. So, like, yes, mutants in this Krakoan time have a better outlook than they did in prior times, but there is still like a lot of anti-mutant like propaganda going on about there.
Mhm.
And I think something that probably would have been more striking and probably would have made it more impactful is if something happened to them because of that.
Yes,
Like,
thank you.
even once they were revealed as not being mutants, you would still get some negative backlash by people who are particularly anti-mutant.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that would have been a fantastic way to like turn this story into.
And also, you can show it like the other half where mutants aren't okay with them pretty much being mutant face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure. An
The
interesting way to phrase
Pretender.
it, but yeah, exactly. The Great Pretenders. Next up, we got Way of X. This is a 5-issue miniseries plus Onslaught Revelation. Cy Spurrier and Bob Quinn do this one. Nightcrawler makes a mutant religion amongst the height of their immortality. Sleeper hit of the Krakoan era. I don't know. I really like it. Bamf with God. That's all my notes on here. What'd you guys think about Way of X? Did y'all read it?
Yes, it did. Way of X is a great kind of take. One is it's a very heavy Nightcrawler book. There are other characters in this book that will form another book later on. But Way of X does deal with the what was it's the one kind of book that actually this feels more like it belongs in Dawn of X because it is the hey, what happens when mutants form their own religion?
I
In
think
this
this
whole
would
thing,
have been included during Dawn of X because they had that one shot with Nightcrawler. But due to COVID, I think they just pushed everything around
right?
and they were like, well, this book's going to be in the second wave because there's a lot of shit going on. Plus, Bob
Right.
Quinn was working on a few other books at the time
Yeah. So
while they were working on this one. So,
it all makes sense of like, but this actually feels more like a Dawn of X book. Again, the focus on w- him questioning what's right and wrong with Krakoa, and then even bringing it up to other mutants, and everyone has their different answers and opinions of how Krakoa should be like how what they should do now. It's cool. It's a it's a great morality tale. And told through the man that once almost became Pope. It's really cool. Um I like it, and also it does have Nightcrawler being a swashbuckler. He doesn't not fight in this book. So
yeah. Justin, what'd you think?
I thought it was an interesting approach that kind of missed the mark for me.
okay.
Ooh, okay. You're the only one who's wrong here.
Like, for me, I thought it was an interesting premise, like sort of kind of getting an origin to like a mutant religion, and kind of like I did enjoy the sort of philosophical questions that Nightcrawler really asked around to try to like develop some kind of sense of morality, especially particularly when you have a system where death is kind of meaningless. So I liked that aspect of it. I kind of felt like I don't know if I would really call it like I feel like he tried to develop a religion, but I don't know if a religion is what ended up happening.
Oh
Like,
no, they touch upon that in the sequel to Way of X, but he
Yeah.
does his best, and he does have some form of something. But then after Inferno, everything is kind of just like fucked up. So
Right.
they kind of do the legwork to kind of pull it back into it.
Wait,
But
and before you even go forward,
it,
before you go to the next book, there is this entire story is about what happens now that they have paradise and the sins that are committed in paradise, and the idea of a devil is finally added in
well, yeah, because
Patrick
one of the
Man.
sins is murder or suicide, and the Crucible kind of encourages both of those things. Obviously,
Right.
more so fight to the death, prove you want to be a mutant rather than put the sword and hope you get revived to get your powers back. But during the height of all of the, like I said, in here, the immortality of it, like, yes, they got to figure out what's going on, because if you can't die, you can't reach the gates of heaven. What the fuck's going on? Nightcrawler's
Right.
got a crisis going on, being the most religious Marvel character probably ever.
He
and I
does.
think the way that it misses the mark for me is I think a more important question is what would why would a religion be necessary in a utopian society?
Right.
How is anything of consequence really? Like
Yeah, a few of the
how are
characters bring that up when he asks about it, and they're like, "Well,
Yeah.
do we really need to?" And he's like, "Well, I mean, that's my whole thing, so kind of."
But
well, and
also,
that's what I said. He does, but like to me, it doesn't feel like it feels more of like what do you believe is right and wrong
right.
versus whether it's consequential to commit good and evil acts.
Well, and that's the whole thing. 'Cause in the entire story, it's told through the lens of Nightcrawler finding out that all these children are committing crimes and like moral and ethical crimes on Krakoa, and they're being told by the Patrick Man is telling them what to do. Um, and they're like, well, there's no psychic attacking them, and it's not like a biological thing. That's what gets Nemesis and Pixie, because it's one of her friends that it happens to, and it's Nemesis, not the Nemesis. Oh, Legion and Legion.
Yeah,
Legion.
Legion pops up at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're going after Patrick Man, which will be later on revealed to be someone else. Um, but yeah, it's one of those like, what do you do, and how do you how do you make sure the younger generation doesn't fall into this moral decay because you have paradise and there are no consequences to your actions on this island.
Yeah, because
Uh,
there are no rules on this island besides like murder no man or some shit like
yeah,
make
murder,
more mutants, kill no man, and something else.
yeah, murder no
But
man,
then
make money something else. Yeah,
and that's why I feel like the more important question would be how are we calling this moral decay when there truly is not a negative impactful consequence to the so-called sins and crimes that they're committing.
oh yeah,
And I feel like that is a much more nuanced question than really what Nightcrawler's been asking. I feel like you can tell that there's like Judeo-Christian roots to Nightcrawler's inquiry, which obviously makes sense given his background.
yeah.
But I think he needed to be challenged by someone who was a little bit more on the par with him from like a philosophical standpoint at that point.
Yeah,
And
I think that would have made it
basically he
up
goes up
much
against
better.
Legion, and they have basically nothing in common besides
right,
like just big head ass energy,
yeah, but also like
idealistic boys.
and the stuff we're talking about, the reason why we bring it up now is it does get answered and talked about later on in Legion of X.
Oh yeah,
But like
Way of
the
X,
problem
Legion
is,
of X, and
but treating, but
Uncanny
because
Spider-Man are a nice
yes,
trilogy.
but like treating each slide as their own story, it makes sense. Like
Of
at
course.
this book doesn't answer these questions, and also
Mhm.
Revelation answers it. But like,
Yeah, Onslaught Revelation is collected in the volume, but it is, I think I mentioned it in a different panel
that's
about
fair.
what's going on with Onslaught. Not a different panel, different slide. But speaking of which, let's get to our next little bit. X Corp. Woo woo woo. Tinny Howard comes back with Alberto Folchi and Valentino Delandro. Angela Monet, I think it's Monet, do
Yep.
business stuff following Empire. Short lived with great ideas. Shame. And Multiple Man was in this book too, and Multiple Man was
Yes.
underutilized in the Krakoan era, which I think is crazy.
So they make X-Core. X-Core was always kind of spinning around in the tubes as a concept. They were talking about X-Core from the beginning of House and Power, from House of Power, talking about who's distributing the drugs and everything. Um, and yeah, it's Angel and his money, and Monet and her money doing business stuff. But the problem with that book is like there's not enough intrigue of them just doing business, because actually this entire miniseries is just them doing business stuff. There is
Yeah.
no deeper story than them
Yeah,
trying
this
to
was like
recruit
a cool
people.
one-shot idea. You know, if they did
Yeah.
a giant-size X-Men Angel, which they do something later on with that, but if they did a giant-size X-Men Angel and just made it like a pseudo X-Corp, I think that would have made more sense. But given that they were like, let's try to squeeze 5 issues out of this, it just seemed a little
Yeah,
interesting. But
but also
hey,
they
man, they
made
tried.
it. They were trying to make this book like, well, both of them have a dark evil side that can come out, and that will play into that dynamic where they try to keep each other under control, so he doesn't become Archangel, she doesn't become Penance. That's a cool idea, but this isn't the book to play with it in. It should have
Yeah,
been
you should
like
have put them in like an X Factor or something. Not X
right
Factor, X Force.
X Force, yeah, something like that, or some other book that they can play off that like, all right, we're both good people that want to do really good, and this is how we're both trying to absolve our
But we got some
sins.
hides. We got some hides
Right.
in us.
And like it doesn't lend itself to this particular book when they're just doing business stuff.
Yeah, Justin, did you read this one?
I can honestly say I didn't
Fair
because
enough. Fair enough. Fair
the
enough.
premise really was not interesting to me at all.
Yeah,
And
do business stuff is a good description.
yeah, like, and I generally love Monet. I think she
Mhm.
honestly has a lot of really good quips and one-liners and like comebacks, but I feel like basically them just going around doing business stuff was just like, okay, like
Yeah, they
it just
tried and
didn't
it was
pull
cool,
me.
but
Yeah.
yeah. All right, we're closing up the dawn, the reign of X with the Hellfire Gala. It's the X Office crossover. The X-Men want to show off the world and have a big, sexy party. Voting for the X cast becomes a yearly event along with the gala. Buy the red carpet edition, the one that's pictured here. It's got everything.
It does, and that's the copy I have too. This includes all the one shots, including Planet Size X-Men, which is the big finale of it. It
Which is
is the
pictured there as well.
Yes. This is where they allow fans to vote in real life to vote for who the X-Men were. Um, and
Well,
in
they
the
give you
book
like
they do
one
it.
person to vote for,
Yeah, I know.
basically.
Yeah.
In the
So,
book, I know they have in the book they everyone votes for X-Men. This one is the set up for Arakko, which is Mars. They terraform Mars and move all the Akari off of Earth, which was a underlying issue in the X-Men book of what to do with all these refugees that are now living on Earth. So they move it to Arakko, making self-proclaiming them the capital of the Solar System, and making Storm the Queen Regent of Mars. Um, Alongside, they have Sword that's there to back up as kind of a diplomatic thing. It's a cool way to show off all the Omega level mutants that Jonathan Hickman had put out in the book. It's a big sexy party showing off big sexy stuff.
Yeah,
And
not
so that
highlighted here, but each X-Men, mostly the main ones, had their own sexy gala outfit, like walking the
yes,
red carpet kind of deal. And every year, Jumbo Carnation would make more and more as the time went on, just to
yes,
kind of one up everybody. And every time we got to see the outfits for,
it was so cool.
we were all like, "Let's go!" Like it was
It
all
was so
very
cool.
cool
And it's
costumes.
cool to see the non-mutant people that were there, like in
Oh
costume.
yeah, like Kevin
First,
Feige, John
well, no, no, no,
Hamm,
no, no. I'm
Patton
talking about like I
Oswalt.
mean
I'm
not
just talking
like
about in general.
like
yeah,
Iron Man and
Yeah.
like
Oh,
right.
yeah.
yeah.
You're talking about Marvel
Like
characters, not
Marvel
real
characters,
people.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean the real people are cool, but like in the Marvel stuff, they
Yeah.
didn't.
Captain America shows up. So does Eminem.
Yes, yes. This is also the Captain America. I think it's this Hellfire Gala. In this Hellfire Gala, where you find out that Emma has a thing for Cap,
Oh yeah,
and he's
somewhere in there.
like, oh yeah, it's in this one. He's like, oh well, yeah. He's like, he likes talking to me, blah blah. Yeah, because you remind him of his mother, and she's like,
Ooh,
what?
yikes.
And
She's like, damn.
that's why later on in Captain America, Captain America, the code word to summon Emma is mommy.
That's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Justin, what'd you think about Hellfire Gala?
It kind of it always gives me like the Met Gala vibes. Like
Mhm.
everyone just shows up in completely outlandish outfits and
Emma
it,
wears nothing half the time. She's just like Diamond with like 3 pieces of clothing covering up the bits.
I mean, in
She's
all fairness,
interesting.
Emma had like 4 different outfits for the gala.
Oh
Like,
yeah, in the first
Yeah.
one she switches like 3 times. She's like, "This is my presenting outfit, my announcing outfit, and my party outfit." It's like, "All right, buddy, take a chill pill."
so I always thought it was like an interesting notion, but to me, I don't get really how this is like. I don't know. Like to me, it just doesn't scream mutant culture.
It
Like
doesn't.
I feel like it's kind
Besides
of
them
just
being
like
sexy.
yeah, like I feel like what they end up showing off is kind of just like mutant power, but
Yeah.
the whole gala itself, to me, like if you have an island nation that's made up of mutants, one would think that they would do something that like just shows off like I don't know, like a developing mutant culture. And I feel like that's what was always lacking for me of like each one of the Hellfire galas. Like
That's
it was
fair.
kind of just like, oh, okay, it's a cool party, but it's like to me it's just giving off like human vibes. Like it's just like, okay, we have a lot of rich elite people here and they're like, let's just throw a party to like show off all of our wealth and what we have the potential to do.
This is the X-Men for white people. Basically, they're just like, let's just have a fun party.
It kind of really is. Like to me, it just that's where it kind of just is like, eh. Like
Mhm.
I get that it's cool, and I get like seeing all your characters and like some of really awesome art, like outfits is really cool. But to be honest, at the core of it, I'm kind of just like, and do you really want? Is this how you really want to portray yourself to a world where you're just like,
Yeah, a
we
a
are
few of the
mutants?
human and otherworldly characters like Captain America and Tony Stark, they mentioned like this is really what you guys are showing us. Like you guys are all dressing up to have a fucking
Well, it's
party.
not,
All
well,
right.
it's not even the dressing up part of it. It's the terraforming of Mars
Oh
is
well,
their
yeah, that was
show
the
off,
finale. They're like fireworks, and also Mars is ours now. Sorry, and you're like, what?
and that's the thing. And it's like so each issue of it, like
It's a
it's
show of
Marauders.
power.
Yeah, so like each issue is like just a pieces of the. So this Hellfire Gala is different than the rest because it's a big crossover. So each issue that was part of a
Yeah,
book
this is the
shows off
first
what.
one. This has like every single issue. Yeah,
Yeah, so it just shows off each character what they're doing that night. Like Marauders is pretty much a prelude. X Force is doing security.
and they
Hellions
gotta
get
fight
drunk
Deadpool.
and get mad and get like kicked out. Wolverine
Yeah.
goes after Deadpool. Excalibur deals with with the fallout of X Swords with Victor being mad that Apocalypse is gone. X-Men is the vote. New Mutants does the back end of the Shadow King stuff. X Corps is them getting drunk and getting hiring. I forgot Mastermind. Sword is them getting the Mysterium because they're about to terraform Mars. Way of X is Nightcrawler getting drunk and talking philosophically. And X Factor is just a weird dance party.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
Tilly Adam is the tie-in where they reveal that gimmick is mutant. That's how she gets to go. Um, and yeah, they have a bunch of tie-ins for everyone that didn't win.
Yeah, a bunch
But
of
yeah,
Marvel Unlimited stuff that we don't touch upon. It is collected in the planet-sized
yes, it is.
or the red carpet edition,
Yes,
but it's a bunch of like, oh, they lost and oh, they won. They do that for every Hellfire Gala, and each one
yeah,
is collected in the hardcover version of the Hellfire
yeah.
Gala when you pick it up. So you'll
It's
always have the extra bits.
yeah, and it's really good. Like I like this as the here's the next. This is the stage for the next step stuff. But on its own as an X-Men event, it's just kind of whatever because it's
Mhm.
now it feels like all the other stories kind of get like cut off at the knee just to do this event and then go back to their stories.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so it's a cool like setup. Like, hey guys, if you haven't been reading X-Men, just read Hellfire Gala 1 and Planet Size, and then read whatever X-Men book you're reading, and then now you can start reading X-Men, actual X-Men from number 1. And it was really just meant to relaunch X-Men.
Speaking of X-Men,
Yes.
Duggan and Javier Pana take over for Hickman after the Hellfire Gala, so Hickman can work on Inferno. Obviously, it was already written, but shut up. Frankenstein from other titles. This opens with a mech fight, which is super cool. Also, Captain Krakoa was there. So
Yes.
yeah, let's talk about Volume 1 X-Men. This is a crazy ass team that they throw us. Like Sunfire, the King Deserter is on the team, as well as every other person from X-Force, Excalibur, and X-Factor, as well as the main two, and then the voted one, who I believe was Sync, right? Wasn't Sync
No,
voted onto the
Polaris.
team?
Polaris.
Polaris voted onto the team, but Sync was from the Vault stuff, so they're like, he's important.
Yep.
Plus, his powers are really cool, and he actually stays on the X-Men team, spoilers, for the whole thing.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
there from Duggan day one. He's like Duggan's
Yeah,
guy.
from 1 through 35. It's a good run. It's a good opening. It feels like a superhero book, and that's kind of where they needed to be.
Yeah, like the Hickman X-Men book was really cool, but it focused mostly on the Summers family, which is good. But this felt like, oh, this is the X-Men.
Yeah. And, definitely. And I feel like, each one of the members sort of got their like time to shine. And
Yep.
I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it because especially somebody like Sync who, prior to this really didn't get much because it was just
This
like,
book is huge for Sync, and
oh my God, I know.
he's still running through the Vault stuff, which in the Vault he had a relationship that spanned like hundreds of thousands of years or whatever with Laura, but this Laura is a different Laura, so he has
No,
all
not
the
yet.
memories.
No,
We
not
haven't
yet.
got
This is,
not yet.
yeah.
No, we haven't got there yet.
No, we haven't.
Because if I remember correctly, they both came out the vault, but she was like,
Well, no, she dies in the
She
Vault.
died.
or
Yeah, so she
She's
died in the
presumed
vault.
dead in the Vault, so they
Yeah.
revive her, but she doesn't have any memories because in the Vault you can't you don't remember anything from there for some
Yeah.
reason. So only Sync remembers because he came out.
Because they
So
only
he's
had the
dealing
back.
with dating Laura,
Laura.
in the thing
Yep.
in the Vault, and then also just continuing on with what happens in the book, Cyclops. Is like he kills somebody and a reporter. I think it's Ben Ulrich.
No. Yeah.
He's
So what happens?
blackmailing Cyclops.
No, it's not.
loosely.
No. So what happens is this: Cyclops dies publicly, and
He
because the
dies
public,
publicly. That's what it is.
yes, and the public does not know about mutant
I
resurrection.
thought he killed somebody. He dies. Yep.
No, he dies. So the public doesn't know about mutant resurrection, and Phil Urich's investigating a rumor, pretty much
Ben Urich.
told to him by Ben Urich. Sorry, it's told to
Phil
him
is the
by
hobgoblin or something.
yeah, it's told to him by a member of Orc. It's like, hey, the mutants are resurrecting, and so he doesn't blackmail him. He goes to Sync and Cyclops, and they're like, no, we resurrect ourselves, and they tell
They
him
also
the
got
story.
a big treehouse in New York
Yeah,
as well.
yes, it's Central Park. He takes up the mantle of Captain Krakoa as an identity to cover up the fact that he's alive. And eventually he has Uric just publish the story because they go to him and goes, hey, no, tell people that we are doing this, because he feels bad about it.
Yeah, Cyclops is like, we can't just be lying to these people. They already hate us. Let's not lie to them.
Yeah, but it's a great setup. The first 9 issues are fantastic. It's a setup. It's a superhero book. It's an actual X-Men superhero book. It's the book that does all the main Marvel Universe crossover stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, what did you think about this? Did you
Oh, I enjoyed it immensely. I mean, it took you back to basics for X-Men. Like, they responded to emergencies. I think one of my favorite things was Jean versus Nightmare. I thought that was pretty ballin'. And you honestly, you sometimes forget how powerful Jean can be.
Well, it's because she's been dead for a while, and then she was a kid, so now this is like her fully back.
Yeah.
So she's got stuff.
The fact that she could go into
To
like
do.
a deity's like night realm and just be like, no, you're not going to do this, by the by, and just basically cuts him at the knees was just a phenomenal moment for Jean in my mind. So, and that's one of like many moments for each one of these characters where they get like I was saying before, they kind of get their moment to like shine and do it really hard. So I enjoyed it a lot.
All right, let's keep it moving. We're wrapping up for real on the Dawn of the Reign of X with Trial of Magneto. Williams and Lucas Wernick bring X-Factor over to solve the death of Scarlet Witch, which is framed on Magneto after the Hellfire Gala. No more Wandas. Toad is a real one. All right, guys. What do you think about Trial of Magneto? So, Volume 3 of X-Factor.
Yeah, pretty much. So because Hellfire Gala ends with the actual, besides the planet thing, it ends with them finding the body of Scarlet Witch, because Prodigy finds it along with Speed. and it sets up this amazing story where Magneto is like, well, it's done so well that you believe because like, oh, Toad takes the blame for it, and you're like, oh well, he, the whole thing. We find out like it's all a ruse, and like Wanda didn't die, and like Magneto did this because like it was under her direction, and it's
Yeah,
all
Wanda murdered herself, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was all to bring back
She's like,
Genosha.
make them like me again. I'll just die.
Was also because like forever she
Yeah.
was called the great because Exodus calls her the Great Pretender, the Mutant Pretender, and she's listed in the early parts of Hickman's era as one of the biggest mutant criminals for genociding
Oh
mutants,
yeah, people hate her, dude.
and
Rogue
at,
mean,
especially.
M
you
Day.
know, I'm dead, yeah, like so. This entire series, this miniseries, does a great job of going and fixing where X Factor could be, and you go, here's the actual case you need to solve. Um, And it's fantastic. I think it's done very well. I think it shows the family bond of Wanda and Eric and Max. Sorry, Wanda and Max, as father and daughter, even though they're not blood related. And it's great. I think it's a phenomenal like story. I think it's one of the best parts of the X Factor trilogy that they fail to finish.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One of the best parts of the trial of Magneto is that, I feel like post House of M, like they never really reconciled, at least even with Wanda herself, like, you know, M Day and all the stuff that she's done, and kind of like how mutants sort of felt about that. So, like, I liked initially where, yeah, she's brought on as this big villain because, yeah, she basically genocided an entire species. Um, so I think this is kind of just like, um, partially I kind of feel like this is just basically because Wanda has become really popular with the MCU. So
Oh yeah, for
they kind
sure.
of
They're like, we need
needed,
Wanda doing stuff.
yeah, they're like, we need Wanda doing stuff, and we also need to bring her back to the popularity of the X-Men crowd.
Yeah,
So
they kill her off in this, and they throw her into Steve Orlando's lap with the Darkhold Diaries, and then not the Darkhold Diaries, just called the Darkhold, and then she has her own solo book that Steve Orlando's doing right now, and then there's the Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and they're going back to Scarlet Witch after. So Scarlet Witch does get a lot more play. So it is cool that what you're saying, where it's like, Scarlet Witch comes back into the main populace of the comic books due to her popularity in all the Avengers movies and nonsense.
yeah, and I will say that I did like this whole idea of her creating this sort of like pocket dimension where all these mutant souls are just waiting for resurrection, as opposed to so to kind of help speed up and facilitate the process. So I thought it was a very good book that dealt with a lot of interpersonal relationships, particularly between like Wanda and Magneto. So it did a really good job. I highly recommend. I mean, I love Magneto books in general, but this one definitely did a great job.
Yeah, this one takes the cake. I make a comment on it later on in some of these tabs, but Magneto changes his outfit so many times. He starts off with the white, and then he gets purple, and then he's black, and then he's purple again. Like Magneto just can't keep his suit just between titles. It just switches randomly. He's like, I'm red now. It's like,
He's
all
kind of
right.
just like, you know what? I'm feeling the gray
I
today.
think it's supposed to show off like his. I think it's more of a visual storytelling thing because like at the beginning he's white, and it's like, all right, he's this is like his good guy era stuff. He's kind of like trying to be a better guy. And then during the red and purple, that's the classic bad guy. During his sword stuff, he's still wearing white in sword, but I think he gets the red by the end that leads into this. And then once we get to the black suit era, that's kind of his like dark redemption, and then he dies. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Magneto's got a lot of stuff to do in the Krakoan era as well, which is very, very cool. We love Magneto. Let's get on to the next bit. James is doing something. Let's get on to the mini series and one shots of this era. First up, we got Duggan and Noto doing Devil's Reign. Emma fucks with Fisk amidst Devil's Reign. It's just kind of an Emma story. I don't know why it's here, but it's cool. Then we got Marauders, which is a one-shot tied into to King in Black. Cable Reloaded, which brings back Old Man. X-Men Black Knight Death of Doctor Strange, because that was the event at the time. X-Men Curse of the Man Thing, a mini event written by Steve Orlando. Onslaught Revelation, which ties directly into Way of X, and then Secret X-Men, which are the X-Men that lost the vote. A little secret mission, and that is Tini Howard on that one.
Yes.
We got anything to say about either Devil's Reign or any of these one shots that stuck out to you?
So Devil's Reign is pretty cool. It sets up like Emma's place, dealing back to her old school times as a old school Hellfire member. It's really cool. Also, Revelation makes sense to close out Way of X. The Death of Doctor Strange X-Men Black Knight thing was kind of useless.
Because Dane Whitman's kid, which is an interesting concept, is the other Black Knight, and she's a mutant.
Yes.
So that's why that book is like X-Men and Black Knight. But also they were just like, what are they doing during Death of Doctor Strange? I guess this.
Yeah.
So,
Cable Reloaded brings back Adult Cable, which that's fine. And I like the concept of Secret X-Men being
Secret X-Men was very cool. I wish it was more than one issue.
Yeah. And Marauders was whatever. It was just like
King of Black tie-in. They fight Venoms or whatever.
Yeah, it's like we're not doing with the main book.
Yeah, here we go, baby. Inferno. Time to burn it down. Hickman, Sheedy, Caselli, and Silva do this book. It's a Moira book. Mystique gets her wife back. Hickman's final X title during the Krakoan era. Inferno. Let's talk about it.
So,
and then kisses.
So Inferno is the end piece to Hickman's story. This is where the rest of the X-Men find out that Moira McTaggart is a thing, and that she's been pulling the strings behind the scenes with Xavier and Magneto. It pretty much destroys the Quiet Council, and then it's all played because Mystique wants her wife back, and in the opening she's able to resurrect Destiny and put her on the table, and it's it's the breakdown of everything that we knew was going on. Oh, and by the way, where I left, I was just changing rooms. So if you didn't notice, I was changing rooms. I was like, my wife wants to go to bed, and I'm in the bedroom recording. It's the break of everything that we knew for X-Men. Also because I like the name Inferno, because it is the original name for Madeline's big story in X-Men, but Inferno itself being the big end piece for Krakoa, if you really want to put it that way.
It's a nice trilogy that Hickman kind of put together if you don't count New Mutants. If you do Hoxpox and then X-Men and then Inferno, it's the Rise, the Reign, and the Fall, all in one little quick trilogy snippet. If you only read those 3 specific books, it's a very cool piece that he did, where it's like the rise of their power, how they're reigning over like the paradise that they have, and then the collapse of the dream. Basically, it's a cool Hickman setup.
Yeah, it's definitely like a peak. You have, them developing, them acquiring power, them developing this whole utopia. Then you reach their apex, where they're at their most powerful, where they are at their best. Everything's looking all great, and then the inevitable downward spiral.
Yikes. And then Mystique wants her wife back.
Well, that's the whole thing, because she explains to them, because the entire time Moira, they're using Mystique to go out on these missions, and they keep promising her to bring her wife back. And they keep going, oh, well, you didn't do this, so no.
Because they said no precogs in the Krakoan age, because Moira, Magneto, probably somebody else who isn't Xavier, and then Xavier oh, this isn't going to last forever, but we're not going to tell anybody. And then Mystique is like, you know what? Eat shit. Because Destiny tells her, yo, bring me back no matter what.
And if they don't let you bring me back, burn it down.
Exactly, and that's where we get Inferno. That's the opening. That's the tease.
Yes, it is.
We get for this book.
And what's great about this about this book itself, it's not just it is a love story. It is like the length and in which they would go for each other.
Sherlock and Watson, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Or Sherlock and Sherlock's girlfriend or whatever.
Irene Adler.
Exactly.
She's Irene Adler. The thing with this story, though, the ending's okay. Everything else makes sense. This is where everyone finds out that Moira is living in Krakoa. It's Xavier Magneto been doing stuff behind our backs, but also it is the rise of Orcus towards the public eye, and it ends with Moira becoming human because we can't kill her, because if we kill her, we would just reset everything, and she'll just know what she did, and we're screwed. She'll just do something different, so we can't erase her. So Cypher turns her human against what Mystique wants, because Mystique wants to kill her. Everyone else wants to put her in the pit, and Cypher's like, well, no, the humane thing is just to make her human. She can't, so in case she dies, it's fine. We don't all get erased.
If we put her in the pit, she could kill herself,
Yeah, and then we all get
gotta
erased.
take her powers away, so then she can't erase what we have as paradise, because nobody knows, and it's not really paradise.
Yep. But no, it's a great ending to Hickman's. If you told me this was going to be the end of the Krakoa age, I would fine.
Yeah, this would have been good. A nice 3 years, barring COVID's intervention. Justin, what do you think about Inferno all in all?
Overall, I thought it was a great classic love story that you can get from Mystique. But I also think it kind of brings all these factors that I would think about when I was reading this book. Like, for instance, having a quiet council. I'm kind of just like, okay, so you have this like group of people that sequesters themselves in this room and kind of just makes all the decisions. And you now have like a group of mutants that just follows it blindly. Like, you know, there's bound in some way to be some level of corruption or some lack of transparency that's inevitably going to bite them in the butt. And this was it. And it was perfect that like Mystique did it, because she's like, you guys have been workhorsing me, having me do all of your dirty work, and then coming up with BS reasons as to not, bring back the one person I actually give a shit about.
She's like, I got 2 kids, but shut up about them. Give me my wife, please.
It's such a good story, because of what happens is like you get to explore life, like what happens when all the corruption's out there now. What happens to your
Everybody
paradise?
knows shit's going down on this weird sex island or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it really in that outing within, because even the Quiet Council decides to keep it amongst themselves that Moira was a thing. And then like that's the problem, because then it starts seeping into other books and ideas, like, well, this and it's cool. It's cool. And also at this time, Cyclops has stepped down from Captain. I know he just leads the X-Men separately. And this is like the remaining of the Quiet Council, because like Storm's up in Araco. Because that's why Colossus isn't part of it yet. Because Storm
he joins in sometime during Inferno.
right after Inferno.
Yeah, I think it's the last issue. It's like we're bringing in a new boy, and then I think it's Immortal X-Men where it's like it's fucking Colossus.
Immortal X-Men does that, yes.
Yeah. But let's get this ball rolling. Finish up the Dawn. We got X Live. I forgot about this as the capstone. X Lives in Death of Wolverine. Ben Percy with Cassara and Federico Ventini do a little Wolvie Daddy event along with 5 issues of an Omega Moira story that Percy didn't want to do. He admitted that in an interview. The Wolverine stuff is good. Bub. Guess what? Fucking Dakin. All right. So what do you guys think about the X Lives and Deaths? Personally, I did not like X Deaths. That was the Moira story. It's cool, and it brings Omega Moira around, and she becomes a freaking problem. But Wolverine was like the main push for this book, so the X Lives was very cool.
So the way Percy explains it, like, it was never meant to be Lives and Deaths of Wolverine. It was supposed to be a Moira X story straight up. It was supposed to explore the 10 lives Moira had leading up to this life now in the comics. And the other part of the story would have been her on the run. But the problem is they wanted to make a Wolverine story, and the story he wanted to tell in the Wolverine comic by itself would have been
this wasn't supposed to be the Percy book. This was, like you said, this was supposed to be the
Hickman
Moira
book.
book, which was going to be Hickman's
Yes.
final Moira bit, but because he was super busy doing other stuff, they got Percy
Right.
to do it because he was consistently hitting home runs with Wolverine and X Factor, not X Factor,
Because,
X Force.
because
So he wanted to continue the Wolverine stuff. So they're like, make them both, and he's like, okay.
that's what it was. Like, the thing is, the story that Percy wanted to tell was Wolverine hunting down Moira.
Mhm.
And that's the Moira story that you really get. The Wolverine stuff doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it gets a little crazy. That Wolverine from the future during Pox
Right. Yeah.
shows up as like a phalanx like problem, and it's a lot going on in this one.
It's not a good story, not because Percy is a bad writer. It's because it's two concepts that don't work together. It's like it's the Terminator, which is fine because that's if a part of an alternate Wolverine from an alternate future shows up in the current time to hunt down to make sure their timeline stays intact. That's fine. But then you have the Omega Moira stuff where she's running around becoming a robot pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then like that gets lost in it. And then then what happens? Like it gets janky and messy, and it gets kind of like it becomes like its own kind of huddled mess of like, is this a Wolverine story or is this a Moira story? And because it's only 5 issues apiece, neither one's told very well. It should have been Wolverine hunting down Moira while in the Wolverine series, and then the Moira X story just being her lives,
Mhm.
to explain some of this stuff. But it's not great. It's not. It's actually one of my least favorite stories in the entirety of this entirety of Krakoa.
Justin, did you get a chance to read this one?
I did, and I definitely agree. I feel like the added Wolverine stuff kind of just murks the waters for a lot of it, because to me, I thought Moria's powers were incredibly cool. Like, it was a cool twist on like either, a time manipulation power, or like, being able to visit past lives or something like that. Like, it in of itself was unique in the sense that, like, okay, she dies and then she's reborn and she remembers everything that happened to her before, and she can kind of manipulate events accordingly. So, I think when you introduce something that is that unique, and especially that fundamental to how this story ends up going, that it makes more sense to have this just be a concentrated focus on like the lives Moira lived up until that point. Because up until the whole Krakoan age, we kind of like just knew Moira as this scientist who lived on Muir Island who helped mutants. Like,
Yeah, he had a
that's
weird
all we
purple
ever.
sun.
Yeah, and she had a thing with Xavier, and Legion, and Proteus, and this whole thing, but nothing ever like to this level, when you're like retconning this character to the point where you're like, okay, she's actually a mutant all along. She had this really unique mutant power, and we think that Wolverine in this is going to be like successful. So
Well, it's because Wolverine was tied to the powers of 10 stuff, with
no,
one of
and
the
I
lives having them last the longest or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely get that, but I feel like it would have been a more interesting story. I think if you, like James has suggested, if you really kept like the hunt from Moira in the Wolverine book and kind of just kept this a solid like Lives of Moira book.
Mhm.
And also Omega Red's here for some reason.
Oh, well, because got to have
Well,
Omega. This is
it's
his big
Omega Red.
tease into the team. All right, let's get on to the Dackins here. Let's get on to the next bit, which was Destiny of X. I guess there was no recommended expanded reading during this era. Question: we are about 3 hours in. Do you guys want to postpone the rest of this till next week,
Yes.
or do you want to power
I
fucking through?
No, I definitely will.
We will split this into 2 parts. We only have Destiny and
It's Destiny and Fall, and these guys go pretty quick. This one's all,
yeah. So we'll
Judgment
do
and Sins of Sinister are the big ones here, and then it just kind of wraps itself up.
yeah. So we'll do Destiny and Fall next time. Also,
Sounds,
because it's almost a 3-hour episode, so let me
yeah,
wrap
we're
this
getting
up,
close.
and I will do a thing on a different recording later.
I
probably
could even make one. It's fine. Justin, don't leave yet. We got to get your, I believe since we're not recording quote unquote locally, you have to download and then email it over to me. I think.
Okay.
I haven't done StreamYard in a while, so we'll get there. But James, give us a closeout.
Guys, thanks for listening. You'll get part 2 of our Krakoan episode next week, which we will discuss the fall and Destiny and Fall of X, wrapping it up through the end of Hickman's Krakoa era books, all the way into Fall of From the Ashes, coming out very shortly. Thanks for listening. You can head over to our website, androidscomics.com, check out this week's previews and new releases. Follow us on Instagram at androids_comics, the podcast Instagram, Androids Amazing Podcast, and Twitter /X, and Androids Amazing for up-to-date news. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend, and guys, always support the local comic shop. Have a nice day. All this stuff will actually be in the description below. So if you want to know the books we covered and what trades to go buy, they'll all be in the description below in the show notes. So you can go, oh, hey, I can go buy that book, or I need this for my collection. So, guys, we'll see you next week with more X-Men.
Sounds good. Peace.
Peace out.